The CEO who almost disappeared, a single father's race against corporate murder. They say Seattle's rain washes away sins. They're wrong. Tonight it's hiding them. Ethan Cole grips the wheel with white knuckles, his unconscious boss slumped beside him, a black SUV hunting them through empty streets. This isn't about a drunk executive. It's about a billion-dollar company trying to bury its own CEO before sunrise. One single father, one night, one chance to expose the truth before the killers rewrite it. Stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The fundraiser had ended 3 hours ago, but the rain hadn't stopped. It never did in Seattle, not in November, not when the city needed cleansing most. Ethan Cole stood in the marble lobby of the Fairmont Olympic Hotel, watching through floor-to-ceiling windows as valets shuttled luxury vehicles through curtains of silver water. His black suit was simple, forgettable. That was intentional. In his line of work, head of executive logistics for Hale Industries, invisibility was currency. His phone buzzed. A text from Marcus, head of Victoria Hale's personal security detail. Boss is ready, bring the car around. Ethan pocketed the device and moved through the lobby with practiced efficiency. He'd been doing this for 6 years, managing schedules, coordinating transport, ensuring the CEO of a billion-dollar aerospace and defense contractor never had to think about the mechanics of her own life. It was good work, stable, the kind a single father needed when his daughter's college fund didn't build itself. The Mercedes S-Class waited under the hotel's covered entrance, engine purring, windows tinted dark enough to discourage curiosity. Ethan opened the rear door and waited. Victoria Hale emerged from the lobby, flanked by Marcus and another security officer. Even at 52, she commanded space, tall, silver-haired, shoulders squared beneath a tailored navy dress that probably cost more than Ethan's monthly salary. Her face was composed, professional, the same expression she wore in boardrooms and shareholder meetings. But something was off. Ethan noticed it immediately. The slight delay in her step, the way her hand brushed the wall for balance. Marcus noticed it too, his grip shifting subtly to her elbow. "Mrs. Hale?" Marcus's voice carried concern. "I'm fine." Her words came crisp, but Ethan heard the effort behind them. "Just tired. Long night." She settled into the back seat with more weight than usual, her head tilting against the leather headrest. Marcus leaned in, studied her face. "Ma'am, maybe we should—" "Home, Marcus, that's all. Just home." The security chief straightened, exchanged a look with Ethan over the car's roof. Ethan had worked with Marcus long enough to read his expressions. This one said, "Watch her." "I'll ride with her," Ethan said quietly. Marcus hesitated, then nodded. "Call me when you're clear." Ethan slid into the passenger seat instead of the driver's position. A deviation from protocol, but protocol hadn't accounted for Victoria Hale looking like she'd been drugged. He'd seen this before, years ago, when his ex-wife's sister got roofied at a bar. The delayed reactions, the artificial calm masking neurological chaos. The driver, one of the company's regular contractors, glanced back. "Where to, Mr. Cole?" "Madison Park, the penthouse." Ethan kept his voice level, but his mind was already racing. "Take Seneca to I-5. As they pulled into Seattle's rain-soaked streets, Ethan turned in his seat. Victoria's eyes were half closed, her breathing shallow but steady. Too steady. Like her body was working on autopilot while her conscious mind drifted somewhere else. "Mrs. Hale, how much did you drink tonight?" Her eyes opened slowly. 2 glasses, wine, maybe 3. Each word took effort. "Why?" "Because you don't look like someone who had 3 glasses of wine." She tried to smile. Failed. "Trying to tell me I can't hold my liquor?" "I'm trying to tell you something's wrong." The smile faded. For just a moment, clarity flickered across her face. Real fear replacing the chemical fog. Then it was gone, swallowed by whatever was coursing through her system. "Feel strange," she admitted. "Dizzy. Thought it was exhaustion." Ethan pulled out his phone, pulled up Marcus's number. Before he could dial, movement in the side mirror caught his attention. A black SUV, 2 cars back, maintaining precise distance despite the late hour and sparse traffic. He watched it for 30 seconds. When their Mercedes changed lanes, the SUV changed lanes. When they took the turn onto Seneca, the SUV followed. Ethan's thumb hovered over Marcus's contact. Then he reconsidered. If someone had drugged Victoria at her own company fundraiser, surrounded by security, donors, board members, calling Marcus might be calling the wrong people. Change of plans, Ethan told the driver. Take Madison to the waterfront, then loop back toward Pioneer Square. The driver's eyes found his in the rearview mirror. That's not the route to... I know what the route is. Do it. Something in Ethan's voice ended the discussion. The driver signaled, merged lanes, took the next right. Behind them, the black SUV adjusted course. Victoria stirred in the back seat. What's happening? Someone is following us. Don't turn around. Just stay down. To her credit, she didn't argue, didn't panic. Even compromised, Victoria Hale understood threat assessment. She'd built a defense contractor from a failing aerospace parts supplier into a billion-dollar empire by understanding when to fight and when to disappear. Ethan's mind worked through scenarios. The fundraiser had hosted 200 people, investors, politicians, military brass, corporate executives. Any one of them could have slipped something into Victoria's drink. But following her afterward? That required resources, coordination, intent beyond simple assault. Did anyone unusual approach you tonight? Ethan asked. Anyone who shouldn't have been there? Victoria's head lolled against the seat. Everyone unusual. Gala full of vultures. Her eyes struggled to focus. Why would someone... She didn't finish. The question answered itself in the silence. Money, power, control. Hale Industries was weeks away from a critical board vote on a $2.3 billion defense contract with the Pentagon. Victoria had enemies, competitors who'd kill for that contract, board members who'd wanted her replaced for years, shareholders who thought a woman CEO was bad for weapons manufacturing optics. Ethan had spent 6 years in her shadow, watching corporate warfare play out in conference rooms and private jets. He knew the players, knew their tells, and he knew that drugging the CEO before a major vote wasn't about scandal, it was about elimination. Driver, what's your name? Ethan kept his voice calm. Thompson, sir. Thompson, I need you to listen carefully. We're not going to Madison Park. We're not going anywhere predictable. Can you lose the SUV behind us? Thompson's knuckles whitened on the wheel. Sir, I don't think... They drugged her, Thompson, at her own fundraiser, and now they're following us. So I'm going to ask again, can you lose them? The driver's jaw set. 20 years of corporate transport work, and this was probably the first time anyone had asked him to drive like he meant it. Yes, sir. Hold on. Thompson gunned the engine. The Mercedes surged forward, V8 responding with smooth, violent power. They blasted through a yellow light at Madison, cut across 2 lanes, and dove into the maze of streets near Pike Place Market. The black SUV stayed with them. Ethan braced against the door as Thompson took a hard right into an alley, barely wide enough for the Mercedes. Dumpsters and loading docks blurred past. They shot out the other end onto Western Avenue, tires screaming on wet pavement. Stay with me, Mrs. Hale. Ethan twisted in his seat. Victoria's eyes were closed, her face pale. Don't go to sleep. I need you conscious. Trying. Her voice was barely audible over the engine. What did they... Give me... I don't know, but we're going to find out. Or she was. Thompson drove like a man possessed, cutting through industrial corridors beneath overpasses, through sections of Seattle that didn't see luxury sedans after midnight. The SUV fell back once, twice, then disappeared around a corner. I think we lost them, Thompson said, breathing hard. Don't stop, keep moving. They drove in silence for 3 minutes, taking random turns, doubling back, checking mirrors. No black SUV, no followers at all. Ethan's phone buzzed. Marcus. Where are you? Status report. He stared at the message. Standard protocol. Security checking in after a high-profile event. But standard protocol didn't account for Victoria being drugged under Marcus's watch. Ethan didn't reply. Where are we going? Thompson finally asked. Good question. Not the penthouse. Too obvious. Not a hospital. Too public. Too many questions. Too many opportunities for whoever did this to finish the job. Not Marcus and his team. Not until Ethan knew who to trust. Then it hit him. Hale Industries headquarters. Downtown tower. Thompson frowned. It's almost midnight. Building's locked down. I have access. Ethan pulled his key card from his wallet. Executive logistics clearance. All floors, all hours. Take us to the underground garage. Private entrance. As Thompson navigated toward downtown, Ethan's phone buzzed again. Another message from Marcus. Cole, respond. Need confirmation she's secure. Still, Ethan didn't answer. Instead, he made a different call to his daughter. Maya picked up on the second ring, voice thick with sleep. Dad, it's midnight. I know, sweetheart, I'm sorry, just wanted to check in. You never call to check in. She was 17, sharp as broken glass, too smart to believe comfortable lies. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Work ran late. Might be later than I thought. You're good at Sarah's house? Dad. Maya's voice shifted, the tone she used when she knew he was holding back. Are you okay? I'm fine, promise. Get some sleep. I'll see you tomorrow. He hung up before she could press further. The lie sat bitter on his tongue, but bringing Maya into this, even tangentially, was unthinkable. She'd already lost her mother to addiction and abandonment. She didn't need to lose her father to corporate murder. The Mercedes descended into Hale Industries' underground garage, motion sensor lights flickering on in sequence. Thompson pulled into a spot near the executive elevator, killed the engine. Now what? He asked. Now you go home. Ethan opened his door. Forget tonight happened. Forget where you took us. If anyone asks, you dropped her at the penthouse at 11:47 p.m. Thompson's eyes met his in the mirror. And if they already know that's not true? Then you say I ordered the route change. Put it all on me. Mr. Cole, you have kids, Thompson? 2 daughters. Then go home to them. This doesn't touch you unless you let it. Ethan climbed out, opened Victoria's door. She was conscious but barely, eyes unfocused, limbs heavy. He got his arms under her shoulders and knees, lifted her clear of the seat. She weighed less than he'd expected, or maybe adrenaline made her lighter. Ethan? Her voice was a whisper. What are you doing? Keeping you alive, ma'am. Work with me. He carried her to the elevator, used his key card to access it, stepped inside. The doors closed on Thompson's worried face. As the elevator rose, Victoria's head rested against Ethan's chest. Her breathing had steadied, but her skin was too cold, her pupils too dilated. Whatever they'd given her, it was still working through her system. Why, she managed, why not hospital? Because whoever did this has resources. They'll be watching hospitals, police stations, your home. The elevator chimed, doors opening on the 43rd floor, executive administration, his office suite. Right now, the safest place for you is somewhere they don't expect. He carried her down the darkened hallway, past empty assistant stations and locked conference rooms, to his office at the corridor's end. The door opened to his keycard, revealing a space Victoria had probably never seen. Modest desk, filing cabinets, wall of monitors showing building security feeds. But the real asset was the private room behind his desk. Ethan had requisitioned it 3 years ago, officially for emergency logistics coordination. In reality, he'd built a bunker, secure communications, backup servers, a cot for the nights he worked through deadlines. The room had its own ventilation, reinforced locks, and access to systems most employees didn't know existed. He laid Victoria on the cot, covered her with the blanket he kept for late nights. She was shivering now, body fighting whatever poison coursed through her veins. Stay awake, he told her. I need to know what happened tonight. Who gave you drinks? Who were you talking to? Her eyes struggled to focus on his face. Everyone? Donors? Board members? A pause. Richard kept bringing me wine. Richard Moss, VP of Operations. Ethan's stomach dropped. What did Richard say to you? Wanted to talk about the Pentagon contract, said we should align strategies before the vote. Her words slurred together. seemed eager. Too eager. Ethan's mind raced. Moss had been with Hale Industries for 12 years, worked his way up from regional management to the executive suite. He was charming, competent, well-liked, also ambitious, ruthlessly so. Anyone else bring you drinks? Don't remember. Her eyes were closing. So tired. Victoria, stay with me. I need you conscious. But she was gone, not dead, but deep in whatever chemical sleep they'd forced on her. Her chest rose and fell steadily. Alive, but vulnerable. Ethan locked the inner room, returned to his desk, pulled up the building's security archives. Hale Industries ran 24-hour surveillance. Every entrance, every floor, every executive event. The fundraiser had been held in the building's rooftop venue, which meant everything was recorded. He accessed the footage, found the gala timeline, started scanning. 200 people in formal wear, champagne glasses catching light, the Seattle skyline glittering through rain-streaked windows. Victoria moved through the crowd with practiced grace, shaking hands, accepting compliments, playing the role she'd perfected over decades. Ethan fast-forwarded, watching her interactions. Donors, politicians, her own executives. Then, at timestamp 2134, Richard Moss appeared at her elbow with 2 wine glasses. Ethan slowed the playback, watched frame by frame. Moss handed her a glass. She accepted, smiled, continued her conversation with the senator. Moss stayed close, laughed at something the senator said, waited. When Victoria raised the glass to her lips, Moss's expression didn't change, but his eyes tracked her every movement. Ethan's hands clenched on the desk. He scrubbed forward. 30 minutes later, Victoria accepted another glass from Moss. Then another, an hour after that. Each time Moss stayed nearby, attentive, solicitous. The perfect subordinate, but something was wrong with the footage itself. Ethan was good with security systems, had to be, in his role. He'd spent hundreds of hours reviewing feeds, learning the camera's blind spots and angles, and he knew what tampering looked like. At timestamp 2217, there was a microskip in the footage. Less than a second. Someone had edited the timeline, removed frames. It was subtle. Most viewers would miss it. But Ethan had been doing this too long. He isolated the skip, tried to recover the missing frames from the backup server. Deleted. Someone had scrubbed the originals and the backups, which meant whatever happened in that missing second was worth hiding. Ethan leaned back, mind working through implications. This wasn't opportunistic. This was planned. Coordinated. Someone had drugged Victoria's drinks, edited security footage, and arranged for her to be followed afterward. That level of orchestration required access, resources, and inside knowledge. His phone buzzed. Another message from Marcus. Cole, if you don't respond in 5 minutes, I'm calling the police. Ethan stared at the message. Marcus was doing his job, protecting the CEO, accounting for her whereabouts. But was he part of the conspiracy? Or just a loyal employee asking reasonable questions? The problem was, Ethan couldn't tell the difference. He typed a reply. She's secure. Needed privacy after the event. We'll update in the morning. The response came immediately. Where are you? Can't say. She requested discretion. Cole, this isn't protocol. I need eyes on her. Tomorrow, Marcus. She's safe. Trust me. No response. Ethan imagined Marcus staring at his phone, weighing options, deciding whether to escalate. In his position, Ethan would do the same. But escalation meant more people involved, more questions, more opportunities for whoever orchestrated this to finish what they'd started. Ethan pulled up the company's personnel files, started building a list. Who had motive to remove Victoria? Who had access to her drinks at the fundraiser? Who could edit security footage without raising flags? The list grew quickly. Too quickly. Richard Moss, VP of Operations, vocal critic of Victoria's aggressive expansion strategy, stood to gain if she was removed before the Pentagon vote. Janet Kerrigan, CFO, quiet, calculating, rumored to have her own board support for a potential leadership transition. David Park, Chief Legal Counsel, brought in by board members who'd opposed Victoria's appointment 8 years ago. 3 executives with motive. But which one had slipped poison into her wine? Ethan pulled up financial records next. Compensation packages, stock options, offshore accounts. If this was about money, there'd be a trail. There was always a trail. He worked through the night, building a case file, documenting evidence, preparing for the moment when Victoria woke up and demanded answers. Rain hammered against the office windows, Seattle's endless storm providing white noise for his investigation. At 3:47 a.m., his phone buzzed again. Not Marcus this time. Unknown number. The message was simple. You should have taken her to the hospital. Now it's too late. Ethan's blood went cold. He checked the sender. Burner phone untraceable. Someone knew where he was, or at least knew he'd deviated from protocol. He moved to the inner room, checked on Victoria. Still unconscious, but breathing steadily. Whatever they'd given her, it hadn't killed her. Yet. The phone buzzed again. By morning, everyone will know what she did. The photos are already uploaded. Her reputation is finished. You can't stop it. Photos. Ethan's mind raced. What photos? Of what? He returned to his desk, pulled up social media monitoring tools. Nothing yet. But by morning, suggested a timed release. Something scheduled to go public with maximum impact. Then he understood. They hadn't drugged Victoria to kill her, they drugged her to photograph her, to create evidence of misconduct, scandal, incompetence, to destroy her credibility before the board vote. And Ethan had played right into it, by taking her away from her security team, by hiding her in his office, by carrying her unconscious through the building. He'd created the exact optics they needed. CEO found drugged in her male subordinate's private room. The implications wrote themselves. His phone buzzed a third time. The pictures of you carrying her are particularly compelling. Single father, longtime employee, inappropriate relationship. It's almost too easy. Ethan stared at the message, rage building in his chest. They'd photographed him in the garage, maybe in the elevator, maybe even in this office, which meant they had access to building security, real-time access. He pulled up the surveillance feeds, started scanning. Most cameras showed empty corridors, automated systems running overnight. But one camera, the garage entrance, had been looped. The same 30-second clip playing on repeat, hiding whoever had followed them. Ethan's training kicked in. He'd done logistics for corporate executives in 3 countries before Hale Industries. He knew how to secure a perimeter, how to lock down assets, how to protect someone when the entire world wanted them exposed. He disabled his office cameras first, physically disconnected them, made sure no one could watch what happened next. Then he activated the floor's security lockdown protocol, sealing every entrance except the executive elevator. Anyone wanting access would need his personal authorization. Finally, he called the one person he knew would answer. Dad? Maya's voice was alert now, worried. It's almost 4 a.m. I know. Listen carefully. I need you to do something for me. What's going on? Can't explain right now, but I need you to go online and search for any news about Hale Industries. Any posts, photos, articles, anything uploaded in the last 6 hours. Dad, you're scaring me. Just do it, Maya, please. He heard her moving, the rustle of sheets, the click of her laptop opening. Okay, searching. Nothing yet. Standard corporate news, stock updates. Why? What am I looking for? Anything about Victoria Hale. Anything that looks like scandal. Silence on the line, then, the CEO? Dad, what did you do? Nothing, but someone's trying to make it look like I did. Keep monitoring. If anything appears, screenshots, tabloid posts, rumors, I need to know immediately. This is insane. I know, but I need you with me. Can you do that? Maya exhaled slowly. Yeah, I'm here. Thank you. I'll call you back in an hour. He hung up, returned to his investigation. The missing second of footage gnawed at him. What had they removed? What was worth erasing? Ethan pulled up the raw server data, dug into the security system's architecture. Most people didn't understand how digital surveillance worked. Cameras captured footage, compressed it, sent it to servers for storage. But there was always a buffer, a temporary cache where raw data lived for 60 seconds before compression. If he could access that buffer from the time of the edit, he might recover the missing frames. It took him 40 minutes of deep system navigation, bypassing firewalls and access restrictions, but he found it. The cache files from the gala, time-stamped to the exact moment of the edit. He extracted the data, decompressed the frames. watched the missing second play out. What he saw made his stomach turn. In the deleted footage, Richard Moss didn't just hand Victoria a wine glass. He pulled a small vial from his pocket, clear liquid, no larger than his thumb, and emptied it into her drink before handing it over. The motion was smooth, practiced, professional, but that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the person standing behind Moss, watching the whole thing with a satisfied smile. Janet Kerrigan, the CFO. Ethan sat back, pieces falling into place. This wasn't a solo operation. Moss and Kerrigan had coordinated this together, one to administer the drug, one to manage the aftermath. But why? What did they gain from destroying Victoria? He pulled up the Pentagon contract files, started reading. The $2.3 billion defense deal Victoria was pushing required board approval. If it passed, Hale Industries would become a major military contractor, expanding into weapons systems and classified technology. Victoria's vision for the company. But there was an alternative proposal buried in the files. A counteroffer from a smaller competitor, backed by several Hale Industries board members who thought Victoria's expansion was too risky. Ethan cross-referenced the competitor's corporate structure. Shell company, offshore registration. But when he traced the ownership chain, two names appeared as silent investors: Richard Moss, Janet Kerrigan. They weren't trying to remove Victoria to take over Hale Industries. They were trying to remove her so their competitor could win the Pentagon contract instead. Billions of dollars in kickbacks, funneled through shell companies, split between conspirators. And if Victoria was discredited before the board vote, drugged, photographed in compromising positions, reputation destroyed, the board would reject her proposal and approve the alternative. Ethan's phone buzzed. Maya. Dad, something just went live. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all at once. His chest tightened. What is it? Photos. You carrying someone through a garage. Headline saying, Hale Industries CEO found unconscious in executive's office. Dad, they're saying you two are... I know what they're saying. Send me everything. The files arrived seconds later. Professional photos, perfectly framed, uploaded from multiple anonymous accounts. Ethan carrying Victoria through the garage, the elevator, the hallway. Each image carefully crafted to suggest intimacy, scandal, impropriety, and beneath every post, the same caption: CEO Victoria Hale's secret relationship with subordinate exposed. Board to vote on removal. The comments were already multiplying. Outrage, accusations, demands for investigation. This was the endgame. Not murder, character assassination. Destroy Victoria's credibility, paint her as unprofessional and morally compromised. Force the board to vote her out before she could secure the Pentagon contract. Ethan checked the timestamp on the posts. 5:17 a.m. Scheduled to go live right before the morning news cycle, maximum visibility, minimum time for response. His phone rang. Marcus. Ethan answered. Where the hell is she? Marcus's voice was raw with fury. Do you have any idea what's happening right now? I know exactly what's happening. Someone drugged her at the fundraiser and now they're using me to destroy her. Drugged? Cole, are you insane? The photos are staged, calculated. She was poisoned, Marcus. I have footage of Richard Moss spiking her drink. Silence on the line, then, send it to me, now. I can't, not yet. If I release this too early, they'll bury it. I need more evidence, something undeniable. Cole, the board is calling an emergency meeting at 8 a.m. If she's not there, if she can't defend herself, they're going to vote her out based on these photos alone. Ethan looked at the clock, 5:34 a.m., 2.5 hours. She's still unconscious. Whatever they gave her, it's strong. Then wake her up, get her to a hospital, get her tested, prove she was drugged. And if the hospital staff are compromised, if they're part of this? Marcus exhaled slowly. You're paranoid. I'm careful. There's a difference. Fine. Then what's your plan? Hide her in your office forever? My plan is to find proof that Moss and Kerrigan orchestrated this. The footage of Moss is a start, but I need the financial trail, the shell companies, the kickbacks, something the board can't ignore. You have 2 hours, Cole. After that, I'm coming in personally. The line went dead. Ethan returned to his monitors, pulled up every file he could access. Financial records, email servers, meeting transcripts. Somewhere in the digital infrastructure of Hale Industries was the smoking gun that tied Moss and Kerrigan to the competitor, to the conspiracy, to Victoria's poisoning. He found it at 6:23 a.m., a deleted email from Kerrigan's private server, recovered from backup archives. Subject line, "Make sure she can't speak tonight. One photo is enough." Recipient, Richard Moss. Sent 3 days before the fundraiser. Below that, another email. This one from Moss to an unknown address. Package delivered. She'll be incoherent by 10 p.m. Make sure your photographer is ready. And a response from the unknown address. We'll handle the rest. Just get her isolated. Ethan saved everything. Screenshots, raw data files, email chains. Then he dug deeper into the unknown address, traced its registration, followed the digital breadcrumbs. It led to a private security firm, the same firm that owned the black SUV that had followed them through Seattle. They'd hired professionals, not to kill Victoria, but to document her downfall, to create the narrative that would end her career. At 6:47 a.m., Victoria stirred in the inner room. Ethan was at her side immediately, her eyes opened slowly, pupils still dilated but focusing better now. "Ethan?" Her voice was hoarse. "What? How long was I?" "6 hours. How do you feel?" She tried to sit up, failed, settled for propping herself on one elbow. "Like I've been poisoned." "You have been. Richard Moss put something in your wine at the fundraiser." Her expression hardened instantly. Even drugged, even compromised, Victoria Hale's mind was sharp. "Proof?" He showed her the footage, the recovered frames, Moss's hand, the vial, Kerrigan watching. Victoria's jaw clenched. "Those bastards!" "It gets worse." He showed her the emails, the conspiracy, the shell companies, the Pentagon contract kickbacks. She read in silence, fury building behind her eyes. Then she saw the photos, the staged images of Ethan carrying her, the social media posts, the manufactured scandal. "They're trying to remove me before the board vote," she said quietly. "Yes." "Using you as the weapon." "Yes." She met his eyes. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. I chose this." "Why?" The question came softer. "You could have taken me to the hospital, called my security team, protected yourself." Ethan thought about that, about Maya, about the years he'd spent building a life for her after her mother left, about the quiet satisfaction of doing work that mattered, even when no one noticed. "Because someone had to," he said simply. "And I was there." Victoria studied his face for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Help me up. We have a board meeting to attend." "You can barely stand." "Then I'll sit, but I'll be there." He helped her to her feet. She swayed, caught herself against the wall, straightened with visible effort. "What time is the meeting?" she asked. 8 a.m., 47 minutes. "Then we need to move fast. Can you get this evidence to the board members?" "Already done. Sent everything to their personal emails 10 minutes ago." A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "Good. Now we need to beat Moss and Kerrigan to the boardroom. Can you do that?" "Follow me." They moved through the darkened office, Victoria leaning on Ethan's arm but walking under her own power. The elevator took them to the executive floor, opened on the marble and glass corridor that led to the boardroom. Already people were arriving. Board members, attorneys, corporate officers. All of them staring at their phones, reading emails, processing the evidence Ethan had sent. Richard Moss stood near the boardroom entrance, smooth and confident. When he saw Victoria, his face went blank. "Victoria, I'm surprised to see you." "I bet you are, Richard." Her voice was steady now, cold as winter steel. "Surprised I can stand, surprised I can speak. Surprised I'm not lying unconscious in some hotel room while you and Janet divide up my company." Moss's eyes darted to the gathered executives. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Then let me clarify." Victoria stepped forward, released Ethan's arm, stood on her own. "You poisoned me last night, drugged my wine with something designed to render me incoherent. Then you had your friends photograph the aftermath, creating a scandal to justify my removal before the Pentagon contract vote." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "That's insane," Moss said, but his voice wavered. Janet Kerrigan appeared from the boardroom, face composed. Victoria, you're clearly still affected by whatever happened last night. Maybe you should sit down before you say something you'll regret. The only people with regrets here are you two. Victoria pulled out her phone, displayed the recovered footage. This is you, Richard, putting a vial of liquid into my wine glass. And this is you, Janet, watching it happen. The crowd pressed closer, phones out, capturing everything. Moss tried to laugh. That's ridiculous. The angle is wrong. You can't even see. And these, Victoria continued, are your emails discussing the plan. Make sure she can't speak tonight. Package delivered. Instructions to your hired photographer. All of it documented, time-stamped, and forwarded to every member of this board 20 minutes ago. Kerrigan's composure cracked. You can't prove... I can prove everything. The shell companies you invested in. The competitor bidding against my Pentagon proposal. The kickbacks you'd receive if they won the contract instead of Hale Industries. It's all here. Every transaction, every betrayal. Silence fell across the corridor. Absolute, complete. Then, movement from the elevator, Marcus and his security team, accompanied by 2 Seattle PD detectives. Richard Moss, Janet Kerrigan, you're under arrest for conspiracy, corporate espionage, and attempted assault. The detective's voice carried through the stunned crowd. You have the right to remain silent. As handcuffs clicked shut around their wrists, Moss finally broke. This wasn't supposed to happen, he hissed at Victoria. You were supposed to be unconscious. Ruined. Gone. Victoria smiled, thin, sharp. I had help. She glanced back at Ethan, still standing in the hallway's shadow. He met her eyes, nodded once. The board meeting proceeded on schedule. Victoria presented the Pentagon contract proposal herself, exhausted, still fighting off whatever poison Moss had given her, but unbroken. The vote was unanimous. Afterward, as the boardroom emptied and Seattle's rain continued its endless assault on the city, Victoria found Ethan in his office. He was packing evidence files, preparing to hand everything over to the detectives. You saved my life tonight, she said. I did my job. No, you went far beyond your job. She stepped closer. You risked your career, your reputation, possibly your freedom. For me. Ethan looked up. Someone had to believe you were worth saving. And you thought I was? I knew you were. The moment stretched between them, acknowledgement of something unspoken, something neither was ready to name. Finally, Victoria broke the silence. I'm promoting you. Head of corporate security, full executive authority, you've earned it. I'm not qualified for that. You're the only person qualified for that. You proved it tonight. Ethan considered her offer, thought about Maya, about stability, about the life he'd built in the shadows. On one condition, he said, name it. No more galas without a food taster. Victoria laughed, a real laugh, breaking through the tension of the last 8 hours. Deal. She extended her hand. He shook it, and in that gesture, something shifted, an understanding. A partnership forged in crisis and sealed in trust. The rain continued falling over Seattle, washing away sins and secrets alike. But some things, some connections, survived even the flood. The handshake lasted 3 seconds, but Ethan felt the weight of it settle into his bones like an anchor. When Victoria released his hand, she didn't step back immediately. Her eyes held his, gray-blue and sharp despite the exhaustion etched into every line of her face. There's more, isn't there? She said quietly. You found something else. Ethan hesitated. The detectives had Moss and Kerrigan in custody. The board had voted. The immediate threat was neutralized. But Victoria was right, there was always more. Corporate conspiracies didn't end cleanly with arrests and handcuffs. They metastasized, spread through networks of complicity and silence. The security firm that followed us, Ethan said, the one Moss hired to photograph you, they didn't just take pictures. Victoria's expression hardened. What else? They accessed our building's security system, real-time surveillance. They knew where we were, what routes we took, which cameras to loop. That level of access doesn't come from outside contractors. Someone internal gave them credentials. Yes. Who? Ethan pulled up his laptop, showed her the access logs he'd been analyzing while she presented to the board. The system breach originated from David Park's terminal, chief legal counsel. Victoria closed her eyes briefly, absorbing the betrayal. Park had been with the company for 6 years, brought in during a difficult acquisition to handle regulatory compliance. Quiet, methodical, trusted. Does Park know we know? She asked. Not yet. I locked down the evidence files before the detectives arrived. Wanted to talk to you first. Smart. Victoria moved to the window, stared out at Seattle's rain-blurred skyline. Dawn was breaking somewhere behind the clouds, turning the gray world a shade lighter. If Park gave them access, he's not working alone. Legal counsel doesn't orchestrate corporate espionage without board-level support. I've been tracking his communications, Ethan said. Encrypted emails to 3 board members. I can't break the encryption yet, but the timing matches. All sent in the 72 hours before the fundraiser. Which board members? Ethan displayed the names. Victoria's face remained impassive, but he saw the flicker of recognition, of calculation. Harrison, Chen, and Volkov, she said. The old guard. They opposed my appointment 8 years ago. Fought every expansion, every risk, every deviation from proven strategy. Her voice carried bitter familiarity. They've been waiting for an excuse to remove me ever since. The Pentagon contract was their line in the sand. And when I refused to back down, they decided to draw a new line. Victoria turned from the window. How deep does this go, Ethan? How many people wanted me gone? It was the question that had kept Ethan awake even as he'd worked through the evidence. Corporate betrayal was rarely isolated. It required infrastructure, coordination, silence from those who noticed but chose not to speak. I don't know yet, he admitted, but I'm going to find out. Victoria studied him for a long moment. In the growing daylight, he could see how much the last 12 hours had cost her. The slight tremor in her hands, the pallor beneath her composed exterior, the way she braced herself against the windowsill as if standing required conscious effort. You should rest, Ethan said. Let the detectives handle the investigation from here. And trust that they'll find everyone involved? That they won't stop at Moss and Kerrigan because it's easier, cleaner, less politically complicated? She shook her head. I've been in this business too long to believe in convenient justice. Then what do you want to do? I want to know who else betrayed me. I want their names, their motives, their entire network exposed. Her voice carried the steel that had built a billion-dollar company from failing aerospace parts. And I want you to help me do it. Ethan had expected this. Victoria Hale didn't survive corporate warfare by trusting others to fight her battles, but the request still settled heavy in his chest, mixing with the exhaustion and adrenaline of the long night. I have a daughter, he said quietly. Maya, she's 17. If I do this, if I go deeper into this investigation, it puts her at risk. I know. I've read your personnel file. Victoria's expression softened fractionally. Single father, sole custody, raising her alone since she was 9. It's one of the reasons I approved your security clearance elevation 3 years ago. A man who builds that kind of life doesn't do it without understanding what matters. Ethan felt something shift in the conversation, a recognition passing between them that went beyond employer and employee. If I help you, he said, I need your word that Maya stays protected. Whatever happens, whoever else gets pulled into this, she remains untouchable. You have it. No hesitation, no qualification. Just certainty. I'll assign a private security detail. Discreet, professional. She'll never know they're there unless she needs them. And if the people behind this decide she's leverage, Victoria's eyes went cold. Then they'll discover that some lines even conspirators know not to cross. I protect my people, Ethan, especially the children of my people. The promise hung between them, weighted with sincerity that couldn't be faked. Ethan had watched Victoria negotiate billion-dollar contracts, face down hostile shareholders, navigate political minefields that would have destroyed lesser executives. She was calculating, strategic, sometimes ruthless, but she kept her word, always. Okay, he said. I'm in. Relief flickered across Victoria's face, gone almost before Ethan registered it. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. If Park is involved, if board members are compromised, this gets complicated fast. We're not just investigating employees, we're investigating the people who control the company. which is exactly why I need someone I can trust. Victoria moved back to his desk, pulled up a chair, sat with the careful precision of someone whose body was still fighting poison. Show me everything. All of it. I want to understand the full scope before we decide how to proceed. For the next hour, Ethan walked her through his findings. The shell companies, the financial trails, the encrypted communications, the security breach. Every piece of evidence he'd compiled while she'd been unconscious, laid out in chronological order. Victoria absorbed it all in silence, her mind clearly working through implications, connections, patterns that Ethan might have missed. When he finished, she sat back, fingers steepled beneath her chin. This isn't just about the Pentagon contract, she said. That's the catalyst, but the infrastructure is too developed. They've been planning this for months, maybe longer. Agreed. The shell companies were established 8 months ago. The competitor bid was filed 6 months ago. This was a long game. Which means Moss and Kerrigan are just the visible pieces. Victoria's eyes narrowed. The board members, Harrison, Chen, Volkov, they're the architects. But who benefits most if I'm removed? Ethan had been asking himself the same question. Conventional wisdom says the VP of operations steps up, but Moss is in custody, so that's off the table. Next in line would be you as CFO, but Kerrigan's also arrested, which leaves David Park. Victoria finished his thought. Legal counsel isn't a typical succession path, but with the top 2 executives compromised, the board could make a case for interim leadership from the legal department, especially if they're already in his pocket. He facilitates the security breach, helps orchestrate your removal, and gets promoted to CEO as a reward. Ethan felt the pieces clicking together. Then he approves the competitor's Pentagon bid, the shell companies get their kickbacks, and the board members who supported him cement their control. Elegant, Victoria said with grudging appreciation. Ruthless, but elegant. So how do we prove it? Victoria stood, moved to the window again. Outside, Seattle was waking up. Traffic building on rain-slick streets, office lights flickering on in surrounding towers. The city cycling into another day of commerce and ambition and quiet betrayals. We don't prove it, she said. Not yet. We make them reveal themselves. Ethan waited. This was Victoria's expertise, corporate chess, moving pieces into position, forcing opponents to make mistakes. Park doesn't know we've identified him as the security breach, Victoria continued. The detectives have Moss and Kerrigan, but the investigation is just beginning. As far as Park and the board members know, their conspiracy is still intact, just missing 2 operatives. You want to use that uncertainty. I want to make them panic. Panic breeds mistakes. Mistakes create evidence. She turned from the window, and Ethan saw the predator that had built Hale Industries looking back at him. How quickly can you set up surveillance on Park's communications? Legally? I'd need a warrant, which requires probable cause we don't technically have yet. And illegally? Ethan considered the question. He'd spent 6 years building security infrastructure for Hale Industries, which meant he knew every vulnerability, every backdoor, every system weakness that most employees didn't even know existed. 2 hours, he said. Maybe less. Do it. I want to know everyone Park contacts in the next 48 hours. Every email, every phone call, every encrypted message. If he's coordinating with Harrison, Chen, or Volkov, I want transcripts. And if we find proof of the full conspiracy, then we take it to the authorities properly, build a case that can't be dismissed as corporate infighting. Victoria's expression hardened. But if they've been smart, if they've insulated themselves with lawyers and plausible deniability, then we use what we find to dismantle them piece by piece. Board votes, shareholder meetings, public pressure. I didn't build this company to hand it over to conspirators. Ethan understood. This wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about power, control, and the future of an organization that employed thousands of people. If Victoria fell, if the board installed Park or another puppet CEO, everything she'd built would be restructured, reshaped, potentially destroyed. I'll need access to Park's office, Ethan said. Physical access. His computer, his files, anything that might have encryption keys or communication records. His office is on the executive floor, 3 doors down from mine. Security? Keycard access only, But as head of corporate security, you have master credentials now. Victoria smiled thinly. One of the perks of your new position. I haven't officially accepted the position yet. Consider this your first assignment. Ethan checked his watch. 9:47 a.m. The executive floor would be busy now. Assistants arriving, executives settling into their daily routines, the aftermath of Moss and Kerrigan's arrests rippling through the building. Not ideal for covert entry. I'll wait until lunch, he said. When Park leaves his office, gives me 30, maybe 40 minutes to work. I'll make sure he's occupied. There's a board conference call at noon regarding the arrests. Mandatory attendance for all senior executives. Victoria moved toward the door, then paused. Ethan? Yes? What you did last night, taking me somewhere safe instead of following protocol, most people wouldn't have made that choice. They would have covered themselves, documented everything, made sure their own liability was minimized. Most people aren't single fathers, Ethan said quietly. When you raise a kid alone, you learn that doing the right thing isn't always the same as doing the safe thing. Victoria held his gaze. Maya's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her. She's the reason I don't take stupid risks. He paused. Usually. And yet here we are. Here we are. Something passed between them again. That same understanding from earlier, deepening into something harder to name. Then Victoria was gone, the door closing softly behind her. Ethan spent the next 2 hours preparing. He reviewed Park's schedule, mapped the executive floor's security cameras, identified blind spots and timing windows. The work was familiar, comfortable. This was what he did. Logistics, planning, ensuring operations ran smoothly even when circumstances turned chaotic. At 10:30 a.m., his phone buzzed. Maya. Dad, are you okay? I've been watching the news. They're saying Hale Industries executives were arrested for trying to drug the CEO, and... She stopped. Dad, please tell me you weren't involved in that. I wasn't involved in the drugging, Ethan said carefully. I was involved in stopping it. Silence on the line. Then, you're the one who found her, aren't you? The photos online. That was you carrying her to safety. There was no point lying. Maya was too smart, had inherited too much of her father's ability to read between lines and connect dots that others missed. Yes, he said. That was me. Jesus, Dad. Her voice carried fear wrapped in frustration. Do you have any idea how dangerous that was? These people tried to destroy a CEO. What makes you think they won't come after you? They won't. How can you possibly know that? Because I have something they want, evidence. And as long as I have it, I'm more valuable alive than silenced. It wasn't entirely true, but it was true enough to ease his daughter's worry. Besides, I'm not alone in this. Victoria, Mrs. Hale, she's protected me. Promoted me, actually. Head of corporate security. Maya absorbed this information. So you went from logistics coordinator to security chief by getting involved in a corporate assassination attempt? When you say it like that, it sounds reckless. Because it is reckless, Dad. This isn't some middle management dispute. This is serious. I know it's serious, sweetheart. That's why I'm being careful. Are you? The question came sharp. Because careful would be letting the police handle it. Careful would be staying out of whatever comes next. But you're not going to do that, are you? Ethan heard the real question beneath her words. Are you going to risk yourself again? Are you going to choose this job, this woman, this danger over staying safe for me? I'm going to finish what I started, he said quietly. Make sure the people responsible are held accountable. And then I'm going to come home, help you with your college applications, and probably overcook dinner like I always do. Maya's laugh was brief, tinged with tears she wouldn't let fall. You always overcook dinner. It's part of my charm. Dad? Yeah? Be careful, please. I can't... Her voice caught. I can't lose you too. The reference to her mother hung unspoken between them. Ethan's ex-wife had left when Maya was 9, choosing addiction over family, choosing herself over the daughter who needed her. Maya had learned early that the people you loved could disappear, could choose things that mattered more than you. You won't lose me, Ethan promised. I'm too stubborn to disappear. You know that. I know, but promise me anyway. I promise." After they hung up, Ethan sat in silence, letting the weight of his daughter's fear settle alongside his own determination. She was right. This was reckless. But walking away now, leaving Victoria vulnerable to whatever remained of the conspiracy, that felt more reckless somehow, like abandoning someone in the middle of a burning building because staying might get you hurt. At 11:55 a.m., his phone buzzed with a message from Victoria. "Board call starting. Park is in the conference room. You have 40 minutes." Ethan moved immediately. He took the stairs instead of the elevator, avoiding cameras where possible, using his new security credentials to access restricted floors. The executive corridor was quiet, most senior staff attending the board call or working through lunch. Park's office door yielded to his master keycard. Inside, the space was immaculate. Dark wood furniture, floor-to-ceiling law books, framed degrees from Harvard and Yale. Everything positioned to project authority, competence, trustworthiness. Ethan ignored the performance and went straight to Park's computer. Locked, password protected, but Ethan had prepared for this. He plugged in a USB drive containing bypass software, let it run while he searched the physical office. Drawers, organized files, client folders, contract drafts, nothing obviously incriminating, bookcases, legal references, corporate governance texts, a few personal photos, Park with his wife, Park receiving some award, Park shaking hands with board members at a company event. Ethan studied that last photo. Park and Harrison, both smiling, both projecting the easy camaraderie of longtime allies. The photo was dated 8 months ago, right when the shell companies were established. The computer beeped softly. Bypass complete. Ethan sat at Park's desk, began navigating files. Most were exactly what you'd expect. Legal opinions, contract reviews, compliance reports. But Ethan knew how to look beneath the surface. He checked recently deleted files, recovered email drafts, searched for encrypted folders. There, hidden in a subdirectory labeled Personal Documents, a folder called Harbor Project. Ethan opened it. Inside, financial projections, organizational charts, succession planning documents. All dated over the past 8 months, all outlining a complete restructuring of Hale Industries under new leadership. David Park's leadership. The documents were detailed, professional, clearly created with board input. They outlined how Park would assume interim CEO responsibilities following Victoria's voluntary resignation due to personal matters. How the Pentagon contract would be redirected to a more suitable partner with proven military credentials. How the company would refocus on stable, predictable growth rather than aggressive expansion. It was a complete takeover plan, hidden in plain sight. Ethan copied everything to his USB drive, then kept searching. There had to be more. Communication records, coordination with Moss and Kerrigan, something connecting Park directly to the drugging. He found it in the encrypted email folder. Messages between Park and someone identified only as consultant. The encryption was sophisticated, but Park's computer had the key stored locally. Ethan broke it open, started reading. The messages went back 9 months. Early conversations discussed removing obstacles to board restructuring. Later messages grew more specific. Target identified, timeline established, resources allocated. Then, 3 days before the fundraiser, package ready for delivery. Photographer confirmed, make sure security doesn't interfere. In Park's response, security is handled, proceed as planned. Ethan's hands clenched on the desk. Park hadn't just facilitated the security breach, he'd coordinated the entire operation. The drugging, the photography, the social media campaign, all of it orchestrated through encrypted channels, insulated by layers of plausible deniability. But the messages continued past the fundraiser. After Moss and Kerrigan's arrests, Consultant had sent a new message, time-stamped this morning at 7:43 a.m. Primary operatives compromised. Hale survived. Recommend immediate fallback to contingency protocol. Park's response, sent at 8:15 a.m. Contingency confirmed. Moving to phase 2. She won't survive this round. Ethan's blood went cold. Phase 2. They had a backup plan, and it involved making sure Victoria didn't survive. He copied the messages, closed the files, removed his USB drive, and was out of Park's office in 90 seconds. His phone was already dialing Victoria as he moved down the corridor. "Ethan?" Her voice came clear but cautious. "Did you find something? Get out of that conference call, now. Don't tell anyone why. Just leave." "What's wrong?" "They have a phase 2. Park sent a message this morning. She won't survive this round. Victoria, they're going to try again." Silence for 3 seconds. Then, "I'm in a room with 12 board members and senior executives. If I leave suddenly..." "If you stay, you're a target. Whatever they're planning, it happens soon. Maybe today. Maybe right now." Ethan was running now, taking stairs 2 at a time, heading back toward his office. "Trust me, please." Another pause. Then he heard her voice, distant, addressing the room. "Excuse me. Emergency situation. I need to step out," murmured protests. Victoria's firm response, "5 minutes." The line went quiet except for the sound of her heels on marble, a door closing, then her voice close again. "I'm out. Where are you?" "My office. Come here. We need to..." The building's fire alarm erupted. Deafening, pulsing, emergency lights strobing in the corridors. "Ethan?" Victoria's voice carried over the noise. "What's happening?" He pulled up the building's emergency system on his phone. The alarm had been triggered manually from the executive floor. Fire department dispatch showed an automated alert. Smoke detected in the server room, but Ethan knew the server room was on the 40th floor, 3 floors below executive offices. And it had independent fire suppression that would activate before building-wide alarms. This wasn't a fire. This was evacuation. "They're clearing the building," Ethan said, realization hitting like ice water. "Making sure everyone leaves. Victoria, where are you right now?" "West stairwell, heading down with the..." Her scream cut through the line. Then struggling sounds. Multiple voices. The phone clattered to concrete. "Victoria!" Ethan was already moving, sprinting toward the west stairwell. "Victoria!" No response. Just the fire alarm's relentless pulse and the sound of hundreds of employees evacuating in orderly chaos. Ethan hit the stairwell at full speed, took the stairs 3 at a time, phone pressed to his ear. "Victoria, if you can hear me, fight back. Make noise. Don't let them..." A new voice came over the line. Male, calm, professional. "Mr. Cole, I'd stop running if I were you." Ethan froze on the landing between floors 41 and 42. "Who is this?" "A consultant. You might have read some of my emails." The voice carried no emotion, just cold efficiency. "Mrs. Hale is currently unconscious in a maintenance vehicle leaving the building. By the time anyone notices she's missing, we'll be gone. By the time you convince authorities something's wrong, we'll be finished." "Finished with what?" "Our contract. Mrs. Hale paid for disruption and exposure. She's getting permanent removal, cleaner for everyone involved." "If you hurt her, you'll what, Mr. Cole? You're one man with a USB drive full of evidence that won't matter if there's no one left to testify. Park controls the investigation now. Harrison, Chen, and Volkov control the board. And we control Mrs. Hale." A pause. "You should have stayed in logistics." The line went dead. Ethan stood in the stairwell, employees flowing past him, alarm screaming, mind racing through options. Call the police. But what would he say? That the CEO was kidnapped during a fire evacuation based on a phone call from an unknown number? By the time they took him seriously, Victoria could be anywhere. Call Marcus. But Marcus's security team was caught in the same evacuation, scattered across the building, managing crowd control. Or he could do what he'd been doing for 6 years. Handle it himself. Move fast. Trust his preparation. Ethan pulled up the building's security system, accessed the garage cameras, rewound footage from the last 3 minutes. There. A white maintenance van, industrial markings, pulling out of the executive parking level 90 seconds ago. 2 people visible in the front seats, no view of the cargo area. He zoomed on the license plate, ran it through the state database using his security credentials. Registered to a shell company. Same shell company that owned the black SUV from last night. They were using corporate vehicles. Professional. Prepared. But also predictable. Ethan switched to traffic cameras, followed the van's route. It was heading south on 5th Avenue, moving with traffic. Nothing suspicious. Professional kidnappers didn't speed or draw attention. They disappeared in plain sight. He had maybe 5 minutes before they reached wherever they were taking her. 5 minutes to become someone other than a single father who played it safe. Ethan ran. Ethan's car was still in the underground garage where he'd left it hours ago. Keys in his pocket from muscle memory. He didn't remember exercising. He threw himself into the driver's seat, engine roaring to life as his phone synced to the dashboard display. The traffic camera feed showed the white van 3 blocks ahead, stopped at a red light on 5th and Columbia. 3 blocks. 90 seconds if the lights held. Ethan gunned the accelerator, tires squealing on polished concrete as he shot up the exit ramp into Seattle's midday traffic. Rain was falling harder now, turning the streets into rivers of brake lights and impatient horns. He cut across 2 lanes, ignored an angry blare from a delivery truck, and caught sight of the van just as the light turned green. They were moving again, heading toward the industrial district near the waterfront. Smart. Warehouses, abandoned factories, places where screams disappeared into concrete and rust. Places where bodies could be staged to look like accidents or overdoses or anything other than execution. Ethan's hands were steady on the wheel, but his mind was racing through scenarios. He was one man in a sedan chasing professionals in a van, heading into territory they'd chosen specifically because it gave them advantage. This wasn't a movie. He didn't have backup, weapons, or any real plan beyond don't let them disappear with Victoria. His phone buzzed. Marcus. Cole, where the hell are you? Buildings evacuated, fire departments clearing the server room, and I can't find Mrs. Hale anywhere. She's been taken. White maintenance van heading south toward the waterfront. I'm in pursuit. What? Taken by who? The people Park hired to finish what Moss and Kerrigan started. Ethan swerved around a bus, kept the van in sight 2 cars ahead. They triggered the fire alarm to cover the kidnapping. Professional crew. Probably the same ones who followed us last night. Marcus's voice went cold and tactical. Location? 5th and Yesler, moving south. Vans registered to a shell company. Same network as the conspiracy. Marcus, they're not planning to ransom her. This is elimination. I'm mobilizing the team. Stay on them, but do not engage. These aren't corporate security guards, Cole. If they're professional, I know what they are, but I'm not losing her. Ethan watched the van take a right onto Alaskan Way, heading toward the piers. How long until you can get units on the street? 10 minutes minimum. Traffic's gridlocked from the evacuation. She doesn't have 10 minutes. Cole. Ethan ended the call. Marcus was doing his job, following protocol, mobilizing resources. But protocol assumed time they didn't have. Victoria was unconscious in that van with people paid to make her disappear permanently. 10 minutes might as well be 10 hours. The van turned again, this time into the maze of industrial streets that ran parallel to Elliott Bay. Warehouses rose on either side, most abandoned or operating at minimal capacity. Perfect isolation. No witnesses, no cameras, just empty buildings and the sound of rain on metal roofs. Ethan dropped back, keeping distance. If they knew he was following, they'd either run or turn and fight. Neither option ended with Victoria alive. Better to let them reach their destination, confirm location, than figure out how to extract her before they could finish whatever they'd started. The van pulled into a loading dock behind a 3-story warehouse. Rusted shipping containers were stacked like a child's blocks, creating corridors and dead ends. The building itself looked condemned, windows boarded, graffiti layering the walls, chain-link fence torn and sagging. Ethan parked 2 blocks away, killed the engine, and watched through rain-streaked windows as 2 men climbed out of the van. Both wore maintenance coveralls. Both moved with the efficient economy of trained operators. One opened the van's rear doors while the other scanned the surrounding area. They pulled Victoria out like cargo. Her head lolled, arms limp, body draped over the shoulder of the larger man. Still unconscious. Still alive. For now. The men carried her into the warehouse through a side door. 30 seconds later, they emerged empty-handed, returned to the van, and drove away. They'd left her inside, with someone else, someone already waiting. Ethan pulled out his phone, texted Marcus the address, then sat in the silence of his car trying to think like a man who hadn't spent the last 6 years behind a desk. He'd done executive protection work before Hale Industries, back when Maya was young and he'd needed any job that paid well. He knew close quarters tactics, defensive driving, threat assessment, but that was years ago, and those skills had atrophied under layers of logistics reports and scheduling conflicts. Still, some things you didn't forget, like how to move quiet, how to identify exits, how to prioritize objectives over survival. The objective was simple: get Victoria out alive. Survival was negotiable. Ethan checked his glove compartment, found the tactical flashlight he kept for emergencies, and a folding knife Maya had given him last Father's Day. Not much of an arsenal, but enough. He climbed out into the rain, pulled his jacket tight, and moved toward the warehouse. The neighborhood was dead quiet, just the hiss of rain and distant traffic. Good for stealth, bad for witnesses if things went wrong. The side door the men had used was unlocked. Ethan eased it open, waited for his eyes to adjust to the darkness inside. The warehouse was gutted, missing walls, exposed beams, concrete floor cracked and littered with debris. Rain came through holes in the roof, creating puddles that reflected what little light leaked through boarded windows. Voices echoed from somewhere deeper in the building. Male, calm, professional. Ethan moved toward them, stepping carefully over broken concrete and rusted metal. The voices grew clearer as he approached what had once been a loading area. He could see light now, portable work lamps set up around a cleared space. He crouched behind a stack of pallets, risked a look. Victoria was tied to a chair in the center of the lighted area, head slumped forward, still unconscious. 3 men stood around her, the 2 from the van plus a third an expensive business casual. Not maintenance workers. Management. The third man was speaking into a phone. Yes, she's secured, no signs of pursuit. A pause. Understood. Make it look clean. Overdose is fine. Corporate stress, recent scandal, narrative writes itself. Another pause. Payment on completion. 24 hours. He hung up, turned to the other 2 men. We wait until she wakes up. Need her conscious for the injection. Looks more like self-administration that way. Medical examiner will find traces of the same drug from last night plus something stronger. Combined with the photos already public, suicide becomes the obvious conclusion. One of the maintenance men nodded. How long until she comes around? An hour, maybe 2. The dose they gave her in the stairwell was lighter than last night. We need her coherent enough to struggle. The businessman checked his watch. In the meantime, we sanitize the site. No trace evidence, no connection to Park or the board members. What about Cole? The second maintenance man asked. He was making calls. Someone knows she's missing. Cole's a mid-level logistics coordinator playing hero. Even if he called security, by the time they organize a search, this is done. We're gone. She's a tragic suicide. The businessman smiled without warmth. And he's a desperate employee who tried to save his boss and failed. Maybe even contributed to her emotional state with their inappropriate relationship. The photos suggest as much. Ethan's grip tightened on the knife. They'd thought of everything: staged suicide, narrative control, plausible deniability for everyone involved. By tomorrow, Victoria would be dead, and her reputation destroyed beyond repair. The board would install Park as interim CEO, approve the competitor's Pentagon bid, and Hale Industries would become exactly what its founders had fought against: a cautious, controllable, quietly corrupt defense contractor. He had to move. Now. Before they decided to speed up the timeline. Before Victoria woke up to her own execution. But 3 armed professionals against 1 man with a knife wasn't combat. It was suicide. Ethan's phone buzzed silently in his pocket. Text from Marcus. 5 minutes out. Do not engage. 5 minutes. Victoria might not have 5 minutes. If she woke up early, if they got impatient, if something spooked them into accelerating the plan, 5 minutes could be too late. Ethan looked around the warehouse, searching for anything he could use. Rusted pipes, broken concrete, a stack of paint cans that had probably been sitting there for decades. Not much, but enough for a distraction. He grabbed 3 paint cans, moved silently along the warehouse's perimeter, positioned himself at the far end of the building. Then he hurled the first can as hard as he could toward the opposite wall. The crash was enormous in the empty space, metal on concrete, echoing like gunfire. All 3 men spun toward the sound, pulling weapons. The businessman had a pistol. The maintenance men had something heavier, tactical shotguns. Ethan threw the second can while they were focused on the first crash, then the third, creating chaos, making them think multiple intruders, forcing them to split their attention. "Check it out," the businessman ordered. "Both of you, probably rats, but make sure." The two maintenance men moved toward the crashes, shotguns raised, spreading out to cover more ground. That left the businessman alone with Victoria. Better odds. Still terrible, but better. Ethan circled back, using the shadows and debris for cover, moving closer to the lighted area. The businessman had his back turned, pistol held loose but ready, eyes scanning the darkness where his men had disappeared. 15 feet. 10. 5. Ethan launched himself from the shadows. The businessman heard him at the last second, started to turn, but Ethan was already on him. He grabbed the man's gun hand, forced it skyward, drove his shoulder into the man's chest. They went down hard, pistol skittering across concrete. The businessman was trained. Ethan felt it immediately. The man twisted, brought an elbow around toward Ethan's temple. Ethan blocked, countered with a knee to the ribs, felt something crack. The businessman gasped, but didn't stop fighting. His hand found Ethan's throat squeezed. Ethan couldn't breathe. Black spots bloomed in his vision. He fumbled for the knife in his pocket, got it open, drove it toward the businessman's shoulder. The blade bit deep. The businessman screamed, released Ethan's throat, clutched at the wound. Ethan shoved him away, scrambled to his feet, grabbed the fallen pistol. Footsteps pounded back toward them. The maintenance men, responding to the scream. Ethan aimed the pistol at the businessman, now writhing on the ground. "Call them off or I put the next one through your head." "You won't." Blood seeped between the man's fingers. "You're not a killer, Cole. I researched you. Single father, clean record. You coordinate schedules and book flights. This isn't who you are." "You researched the wrong version." Ethan's voice came cold. "I became that person for my daughter. But before her, I did executive protection in Kabul, Lagos, and Mexico City. I've killed men who threaten my principles. And right now, you're threatening someone I'm protecting." The businessman's eyes widened, recognizing truth when he heard it. "Stand down!" he shouted toward his approaching men. "Now!" The footsteps stopped. Tense silence filled the warehouse. "Drop your weapons and step into the light where I can see you," Ethan ordered. "Hands visible. Move slow." The two maintenance men emerged from the shadows, shotguns lowered but not dropped, eyes calculating odds. They could rush him. Probably should. Their job was to complete the contract, and right now Ethan was the only thing stopping them. But the businessman was bleeding, maybe dying, and they weren't paid enough to risk dying themselves. "Put the guns down," the businessman repeated, voice weakening. "Mission's compromised. We leave, now." "What about payment?" one of the men asked. "Fuck the payment. He just put a knife through my shoulder. I need a hospital." The men hesitated, then set their shotguns on the concrete. Ethan kept the pistol trained on them as they helped the businessman to his feet, supported his weight between them. "You're letting them go." Victoria's voice came weak but conscious from the chair behind him. "Ethan, they were going to kill me." "I know." Ethan didn't take his eyes off the three men limping toward the exit. "But if I shoot them, I become a murderer. Then Maya loses her father to prison instead of corporate conspiracy. I can't do that to her." The businessman paused at the door, looked back. "This isn't over, Cole. Park has resources you can't imagine. You just made yourself a target. Get in line." The three men disappeared into the rain. Ethan waited 30 seconds, making sure they were really gone, then rushed to Victoria. Her hands were zip-tied to the chair, another tie around her ankles. He cut them free with the bloody knife, helped her stand. "Can you walk?" "I think so." She swayed, caught herself against his shoulder. "What did they give me?" "Same thing as last night, probably, plus something to keep you unconscious during transport." He supported her weight, guided her toward the exit. "We need to move. Marcus is inbound with security, but those men might regroup. Come on." They made it to the door when Victoria's legs gave out. Ethan caught her, lifted her the way he had last night, arms under shoulders and knees, her head against his chest. "This is becoming a pattern," she murmured. "Try not to get kidnapped so often. Try not to make it look so romantic when you rescue me. The photos are bad enough. Despite everything, the violence, the fear, the adrenaline still screaming through his system, Ethan almost laughed. They emerged into daylight and rain to find Marcus and 6 security personnel surrounding the warehouse, weapons drawn. Marcus lowered his pistol when he saw them, rushed forward. Jesus Christ, Cole. When I said don't engage, I know what you said. Ethan transferred Victoria to Marcus's arms, suddenly aware of how much his hands were shaking. 3 hostiles armed, planning to stage her suicide. They're gone now. Wounded one. Let them go. Marcus stared at him. You let them go? Long story. Just get her to a hospital. Real one this time. Full security detail. No one gets near her without 3 levels of clearance. What about you? Ethan looked down at his hands, scraped knuckles. Someone else's blood, the knife still clutched in his right fist. He'd become someone he'd worked hard to leave behind. For Maya. For the quiet life he'd built after years of violence. I need to call my daughter, he said quietly. Tell her I'm okay before she sees this on the news. Victoria raised her head from Marcus's shoulder, met Ethan's eyes. Thank you. Again. We're not done yet. Park's still out there, the board members, the whole network. Ethan forced his hands to stop shaking. This was just one piece. Then we take the rest of them down. Even drugged, even traumatized, Victoria's voice carried steel. Together, Marcus carried her toward a waiting SUV. Ethan watched them go, then pulled out his phone. 17 missed calls from Maya, 8 from unknown numbers, 3 from Park. He dialed Maya first. She answered before the first ring finished. Dad, where are you? The news is saying there was an incident at your building and you're not answering, and I swear if you're dead, I'm going to kill you myself. I'm alive. I'm okay. I promise. Silence. Then the sound of crying, quickly suppressed. You promised you'd be careful. I was careful. Just faster than everyone else. Ethan leaned against his car, suddenly exhausted. It's complicated, sweetheart. But I'm fine. Victoria's fine. The bad guys are gone. For now. For now, he agreed. Listen, I need you to stay at Sarah's tonight. Maybe tomorrow too. Just until we sort this out completely. Dad, please, Maya. I need to know you're safe so I can focus on finishing this. Another pause, then, okay, but you have to promise to actually finish it. No more rescues, no more chasing vans. You end this, Dad, completely. I will. And then you're taking a vacation, somewhere boring, like Iowa. Deal. After hanging up, Ethan stared at his phone. 3 calls from Park. That was bold or desperate, possibly both. He called back. Park answered immediately. Mr. Cole, I'm glad you're safe. There's been some concern about your whereabouts after the building evacuation. I'm sure there has been. I understand you were involved in an incident near the waterfront. Something about Mrs. Hale being taken? She's fine now. Thanks for your concern. I see. Park's voice remained smooth, professional, unreadable. Perhaps we should meet. Discuss what happened. Clear up any misunderstandings. There's no misunderstanding, Park. I know what you did. The Harbor Project files, the encrypted emails. Your coordination with the people who drugged Victoria last night and kidnapped her today. Ethan let each accusation land. It's over. Marcus has her in protective custody. I have copies of everything, and the police are very interested in talking to you about conspiracy, attempted murder, and corporate espionage. Silence on the line. Long enough that Ethan wondered if Park had hung up. Then, you're making a mistake, Cole. You think you understand what's happening here, but you're seeing pieces of a much larger structure. Victoria is brilliant but reckless. She's driving this company toward catastrophic risk with her Pentagon ambitions. The board members you're vilifying? They're trying to save Hale Industries from her ego. By drugging her and staging her suicide? By removing an obstacle before she destroys everything we've built. Park's composure was cracking now, frustration bleeding through. You want to be the hero? Fine, save the company instead of blindly protecting one woman who's leading us toward disaster. That's not your decision to make. It's the shareholders, the boards, not a conspiracy of executives who think they know better. The board agrees with me, Cole. It's Harrison, Chen, Volkov. They all understand what needs to happen. We have the votes. We have the authority. All you have is evidence of internal corporate disagreement. No court will call it conspiracy when it's legitimate business strategy. Legitimate business strategy doesn't involve kidnapping and attempted murder. Prove I was involved in that. The men you encountered? Independent contractors. No connection to me. You're grasping at circumstantial evidence and hoping it holds together. Park's confidence was returning. Here's what's going to happen. Victoria will resign due to health concerns and recent scandal. The board will install interim leadership. The Pentagon contract will go to a more qualified bidder. And you'll go back to whatever middle management position we find for you. Everyone walks away. Simple. Except Victoria doesn't resign. She fights. And I help her. Then you both lose. She loses her company. You lose your job, your reputation, probably custody of your daughter, when the courts hear about your involvement in all this. The threat came casual, conversational. Single father, unstable employment, engaged in workplace relationship that led to violence. Family court judges take that seriously. Ethan's blood went cold. They'd researched Maya, identified her as leverage. The one thing Ethan couldn't protect through strength or strategy. You go near my daughter. I'm not threatening anyone, Cole. I'm stating facts. You're in over your head. You've involved yourself in corporate matters you don't understand. And now you're facing consequences. Resign quietly. Convince Victoria to do the same. Walk away while you still can. The line went dead. Ethan stood in the rain, phone pressed to his ear, mind working through the implications. Park was right about one thing. The evidence was circumstantial. Encrypted emails could be denied. Harbor project files could be explained as contingency planning. Even the kidnapping could be framed as independent criminals with no corporate connection. Unless Ethan could prove direct coordination, financial payments, communication records, something undeniable that tied Park and the board members to specific criminal acts. His phone buzzed. Text from unknown number. The consultant you wounded at the warehouse wants to talk. He has information you'll want. Meet at Pike Place Market, Main Arcade, 1 hour. Come alone. Ethan stared at the message. Obvious trap. The businessman he'd stabbed wanted revenge, or his employers wanted Ethan neutralized, or this was Park's way of removing the last threat to his takeover. But if the consultant really did have information, payment records, communication logs, something that proved Park's direct involvement, it might be the evidence Ethan needed. He texted back. How do I know this isn't a setup? The response came immediately. You don't. But I'm bleeding out in a clinic with a knife wound I can't explain to real hospitals. My employer abandoned me. Park stopped payment. I'm done being loyal. You want proof of the conspiracy? I'll give it to you, but only if you come alone. Ethan checked the time, 2:47 p.m. 1 hour put the meeting at 3:47, right in the middle of tourist crowds at Pike Place. Public location. Witnesses. Harder to stage an accident or ambush. He texted Marcus, going to meet the consultant from the warehouse. Pike Place Market, Main Arcade, 3:47. If I'm not back in 2 hours, assume worst. Marcus responded instantly. Absolutely not. That's a trap. Probably. But if he's telling the truth, this could end it. Park. The board members. Everything. Cole, you're not trained for this anymore. Let me send a team, he said alone. If he sees security, he'll disappear. Then don't go. Ethan looked toward the hospital where Victoria was being treated. She'd survived 2 attempts on her life in 24 hours. Park and the board wouldn't stop until she was gone, or they were. This consultant, wounded, abandoned, possibly willing to flip, might be the only chance to end this before Phase 3 started. I'm going. Track my phone. If things go bad, you'll know where to find me. He pocketed his phone before Marcus could argue further, climbed into his car, and headed toward Pike Place Market. The rain was relentless now, turning Seattle's streets into ribbons of gray water. Perfect weather for a meeting that would probably get him killed. Traffic was heavy near the market. Tourists, locals, delivery trucks all competing for limited street parking. Ethan found a spot 3 blocks away, walked through the downpour toward the iconic neon sign and clock tower. The market was crowded despite the weather. People huddled under awnings, browsing fish stalls and flower vendors and artisan crafts. He entered the main arcade at 3:44 p.m., scanned the crowd for threats. Families, couples, solo tourists photographing everything. No obvious security personnel. No men in maintenance coveralls. No one paying particular attention to Ethan. At 3:47 exactly, a hand touched his shoulder. Ethan spun, found himself face to face with the businessman from the warehouse. The man looked rough, pale, sweating, favoring his wounded shoulder. A bandage bulged beneath his jacket. "Cole, thanks for coming. You have 30 seconds to convince me this isn't a trap before I walk away." The businessman pulled out a phone, displayed a screen full of financial transactions. Wire transfers from 3 shell companies to my account. Total payment, $200,000. Dates correspond to Victoria Hale's drugging and planned suicide. Names on the shell companies trace back to Harrison, Chenin, and Volkov through intermediary corporations. Ethan studied the screen. The transactions were detailed, specific, exactly the kind of evidence that could survive courtroom scrutiny. "Why are you giving me this?" "Because Park stopped payment after you interrupted our contract. Said the failure was our fault, not his. Now I'm out $200,000 and carrying a stab wound I can't report without admitting to kidnapping." The businessman's smile was bitter. "I'm a professional, Cole. I don't take non-payment well, so I'm giving you the evidence that destroys Park and the board members who hired me. Call it professional courtesy between people who got screwed by the same employer. And what do you want in return?" "Immunity. You take this to the authorities, make sure my involvement gets classified as cooperating witness instead of co-conspirator. I walk away, leave the country, never work corporate contracts again." Ethan considered the offer. Letting a would-be murderer walk free to secure evidence against the people who'd hired him. Morally complicated, legally questionable, tactically necessary. "Send me everything," Ethan said. "Financial records, communication logs, anything connecting Park to the payments." The businessman's fingers moved across his phone. "Sending now." "But Cole, Park knows I'm talking to you. He's got people watching. You should move fast." "How many people?" "Enough." The businessman glanced over Ethan's shoulder, eyes tracking something. "Including that woman at the flower stand who's been photographing us for the last 2 minutes. Ethan turned slowly. A woman in a rain jacket stood 30 feet away, phone raised, camera pointed directly at them. When she saw Ethan notice, she lowered the phone and spoke into it. "Run," the businessman said quietly. "They're not here to talk." Ethan didn't run. He turned and walked quickly toward the market's north exit, weaving through crowds, using bodies for cover. Behind him, footsteps multiplied. Not one person. Several. His phone buzzed. Message from Marcus. "Tracking you. Security team en route. Hold position." But holding position meant getting surrounded. Ethan kept moving, pushed through a group of tourists, took a sharp left into a corridor lined with craftspeople selling jewelry and art. The footsteps followed. He risked a glance back. 3 men, spread out, moving with purpose. Not maintenance workers this time. Professional security, the kind corporations hired when lawyers and consultants failed. Ethan emerged onto Pike Place proper, the cobblestone street slick with rain, vendor stalls on either side. Ahead, the famous fish market with its thrown salmon and shouted banter. Beyond that, the post alley exit. He ran. The crowd surged around him, confused tourists, annoyed vendors, someone shouting about watching where he was going. Ethan ignored all of it, focused on the alley exit, on escape, on getting somewhere Marcus's team could reach him before Park's people did. A hand grabbed his jacket. Ethan spun, drove his elbow into whoever had caught him, heard a grunt of pain. The hand released. He kept running. Post Alley was narrow, lined with restaurants and bars, dumpsters and delivery entrances. Ethan sprinted down its length, lungs burning, legs screaming. Behind him, the footsteps echoed off brick walls. He burst onto First Avenue, nearly got hit by a taxi, stumbled across the street into... Strong hands caught him. Ethan tried to fight, but these hands were professional, controlled, familiar. "Easy, Cole. It's me." Marcus. Flanked by 4 security personnel, all armed, all positioned to cover the alley exit. The 3 men pursuing Ethan emerged into daylight, saw Marcus's team, and immediately turned and walked away. No confrontation, no fight, just professionals recognizing when odds had shifted. You okay? Marcus asked, releasing Ethan. Yeah, the consultant gave me evidence, financial records connecting Park and the board members to the kidnapping. Ethan pulled out his phone, checked for the files the businessman had sent. All there. Complete. Damning. This is it, Marcus. Everything we need. Marcus studied his face. You're bleeding. Ethan touched his forehead, came away with blood. Must have caught an elbow or fist during the chase without noticing. Adrenaline did that. Made you numb to damage until after the threat passed. I'm fine. We need to get this to the police, to the FBI, to anyone who can move fast before Park realizes what we have. Already done. Marcus pulled out his own phone, showed Ethan a text chain with someone identified as Agent Rivera, FBI Seattle. Victoria called from the hospital, gave a formal statement about the kidnapping, the drugging, everything. Federal investigators are already serving warrants on Park's office and home. What about Harrison Chen and Volkov? Them too. Full board investigation. SEC is involved now. Corporate fraud, conspiracy, attempted murder. This isn't going away quietly, Cole. You made sure of that. Ethan sagged against the nearest wall, exhaustion finally catching up with the adrenaline. 24 hours ago, he'd been a logistics coordinator driving his boss home from a fundraiser. Now he was bleeding in an alley, holding evidence that would destroy some of Seattle's most powerful corporate executives. I need to see Victoria, he said. Make sure she's really okay. Hospital's got her in secure medical. No visitors except immediate family. I'm her head of security. That makes me family enough. Marcus smiled. Fair point. Come on. I'll drive. They rode in silence through rain-soaked streets, Marcus's security team following in a second vehicle. Ethan watched the city slide past, thinking about Maya, about the life he'd built for her, about how close he'd come to losing everything in the last 24 hours. His phone buzzed. Text from Park. You've made a terrible mistake, Cole. Evidence is just data. Stories are what matter, and I'm very good at telling stories. Ethan deleted the message without responding. Park could tell whatever stories he wanted, but stories didn't hold up in federal court. Evidence did. The hospital's secured wing required 3 separate clearances to access. Marcus handled the credentials while Ethan waited in a private lobby, watching news coverage on a muted television. The story was breaking now. Arrests at Hale Industries, investigation into corporate conspiracy, CEO recovering from second assassination attempt. His phone buzzed again. This time, Maya. You're on the news, Dad. They're calling you a hero. I'm not a hero, I'm just someone who was there. That's what heroes always say. Her voice carried relief mixed with exhaustion. Is it really over? I think so. The people responsible are being arrested. Victoria's safe. The evidence is with federal investigators. So you can come home? Soon. I just need to check on Victoria first. Make sure she's really okay. Dad? Yeah? I'm proud of you for doing the right thing even when it was scary. Ethan felt something catch in his throat. Thanks, sweetheart. That means a lot. After hanging up, he sat in the quiet lobby, letting Maya's words settle into the exhaustion. 17 years of single parenthood, of putting her first, of building a safe and stable life. And somehow, despite everything, he'd managed not to screw it up completely. Marcus emerged from the security checkpoint. She's asking for you. Ethan followed him through sterile corridors to a private room at the wing's far end. 2 security guards stood outside. Inside, Victoria sat propped up in bed, IV in her arm, monitors beeping steadily. She looked better than she had in the warehouse, color returning to her face, eyes clear and focused. Ethan, she smiled when she saw him. Marcus told me what you did. The consultant, the evidence, all of it. Just following through on what we started. You did more than that. You took risks I had no right to ask you to take. Her expression grew serious. I owe you my life, twice now. You don't owe me anything. I did my job. Your job was logistics coordination. Rescuing CEOs from assassination attempts is significantly outside your job description. Ethan pulled up a chair, sat beside her bed. Then consider it a perk of my new position as head of security. About that, Victoria shifted against her pillows, winced slightly. I meant what I said yesterday. The promotion is real. Full executive authority, seat at strategic planning meetings, complete autonomy over security operations. If you want it. And if I don't? Then I'll understand. You've been through hell in the last day. You have a daughter to think about. If you want to walk away from all this, I won't blame you. Ethan considered the offer. Walking away meant safety, stability, going back to the quiet life he'd built. But it also meant leaving Victoria vulnerable to whatever remained of the conspiracy, leaving Hale Industries in the hands of people who'd proven they'd kill to control it. I'll take the position, he said, on one condition. Name it. When this settles, when the investigations are done and the board is cleaned up and things return to normal, you take a vacation, somewhere far away, somewhere you can actually rest. Victoria laughed softly. Deal, though I'm not sure I remember how to vacation. You'll figure it out. You're smart that way. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of the last 24 hours settling between them. Then Victoria spoke again, quieter now. Did we make a mistake, Ethan? Getting this close? The photos? The scandal? The way all of this looks to the outside world? Ethan thought about the question, about professional boundaries and corporate optics, and all the reasons this kind of connection between CEO and security chief was complicated. I don't know, he said honestly. Maybe, but mistakes don't invalidate the trust. And right now, trust is the only thing keeping either of us alive. Victoria met his eyes, and something unspoken passed between them. Understanding, partnership, something that might become more given time and safety and distance from crisis. But not yet. Not while federal investigators were still building cases, not while Park and the board members still had lawyers and resources, not while the full scope of the conspiracy remained unclear. Get some rest, Ethan said, standing. I'll make sure security knows no one gets near you without my explicit approval. Even you? Especially me. I'm the one who keeps carrying you unconscious through buildings, clearly a security risk. Her smile was real this time, reaching her eyes. Thank you, Ethan, for everything. He nodded, headed for the door, then paused. Victoria, when you said the board members were the architects, are you sure it was just Harrison, Chen, and Volkov? No one else? Her expression shifted slightly. Why? Because conspiracies this big usually have layers. People we haven't identified yet. I want to make sure we've got everyone before we call this finished. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Then, there might be one more. Someone on the board who never spoke against me publicly but always voted with Harrison's block. Someone who'd benefit from Park's promotion more than the others. Who? Thomas Brennan. He owns the competitor bidding against our Pentagon contract, through shell companies like the others, but his involvement is buried deeper, more careful. Ethan felt the case expanding again, complications multiplying. Do the federal investigators know? I mentioned him in my statement, but proving his involvement will be harder. He's been more cautious than the others. Then we keep digging, make sure this really is finished. Ethan opened the door, glanced back. Rest, I'll handle it. He left her room, mind already working through next steps. The consultant's evidence had given them Park and 3 board members. But if there was a fourth, someone pulling strings from deeper cover, the conspiracy wasn't over, just wounded. Marcus was waiting in the hallway. Everything okay? We might have another problem. Thomas Brennan, board member with ties to the competitor company. Victoria thinks he's involved, but buried deeper. Marcus's expression hardened. I'll pull his files, see what we can find. Do it quietly. If he knows we're looking, he'll disappear what's left of the evidence. Understood. What about you? You going home finally? Ethan checked his watch. 6:23 p.m. Maya would be having dinner at Sarah's house. Safe, protected, far from the corporate warfare still playing out in Seattle's towers. Not yet, he said. I need to go back to the office. Make sure everything's locked down for the night. Check the evidence files. Confirm the federal investigators have everything they need. Cole, you've been awake for 36 hours. You're running on adrenaline and determination. At some point, you need to sleep. At some point, Ethan agreed, but not until this is really finished. Marcus drove him back to Hale Industries headquarters through evening traffic, the rain finally breaking into scattered drizzle. The building rose against Seattle's darkening skyline like a monument to ambition and betrayal both. Ethan watched it approach, thinking about all the hours he'd spent in those offices, managing schedules and coordinating logistics, never imagining he'd someday be dismantling a conspiracy from within its walls. "You really think Brennan's the missing piece?" Marcus asked, navigating around a delivery truck. "Victoria does, and she's been reading corporate politics longer than either of us." Ethan rubbed his eyes, exhaustion pulling at him. "If there's a fourth conspirator, we need to find him before the others start cutting deals with federal prosecutors. Once the plea bargains start, whoever's left standing gets to control the narrative." "Brennan's smart. Been on the board for 12 years, never made waves, always voted with the majority." Marcus pulled into the underground garage. "If he's been hiding involvement this whole time, he's not going to leave evidence lying around." "Everyone leaves evidence. It's just a question of knowing where to look." The executive floor was mostly empty when they arrived, just a few dedicated employees working late and security personnel Marcus had stationed at key points. Ethan's office felt strange now. What had been a refuge during Victoria's drugging was now command center for an investigation that kept expanding. He booted up his computer, pulled up Thomas Brennan's personnel file. 63 years old, former aerospace executive, recruited to Hale Industries board during Victoria's first year as CEO. Educational background from Stanford and MIT. Family man, wife, 3 grown children, 5 grandchildren. Philanthropist, particularly focused on veterans' causes. On paper, Brennan looked like exactly the kind of respectable board member any corporation would want. But Ethan had learned that respectability was often just a better quality mask. He dug deeper, accessing financial records that technically required warrant-level authorization, but which his new security clearance could justify as threat assessment. Brennan's compensation from Hale Industries was standard for board members: retainer fees, stock options, meeting attendance bonuses. Nothing unusual. But when Ethan cross-referenced Brennan's personal investments against the shell companies connected to the conspiracy, patterns emerged. Brennan held stakes in 3 different aerospace contractors, all of which had submitted bids for contracts that Hale Industries had also pursued. Not illegal. Board members were allowed personal investments. But the timing was interesting. Each time Hale Industries lost a contract bid, Brennan's alternative investments had won. And each time Brennan had voted against Victoria's strategic recommendations in board meetings, citing fiscal prudence and risk management. Ethan pulled up the Pentagon contract files, compared them against Brennan's portfolio. The competitor that Moss and Kerrigan had been supporting, the one that would win if Victoria's proposal was rejected, had Brennan as a silent partner through 2 layers of holding companies. There it was, the financial motive. Not just removing Victoria, but ensuring his own investments succeeded at Hale Industries' expense. "Marcus, look at this." Ethan displayed the connection web he'd built. Brennan profits every time Hale Industries loses a major contract, and he's positioned to make $500 million if the Pentagon contract goes to the competitor instead of us. Marcus studied the screen, jaw tightening. That's a clear conflict of interest. He should have recused himself from any vote involving those bids. He should have, but he didn't. Which means either he's been hiding the conflict intentionally, or he's been actively sabotaging Victoria's proposals to benefit his own investments. Marcus pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the FBI. This is securities fraud on top of everything else." "Wait." Ethan held up a hand. "If we bring in federal investigators now, Brennan will lawyer up, claim the investments were disclosed, claim he didn't know about the conflicts, bury everything in legal process that takes years to resolve. So what do you want to do?" "I want to talk to him, directly, tonight. Make him think we're offering a deal. Cooperate now, avoid the worst charges. See if we can get him to give up the rest of the network before his lawyers teach him to stay quiet." Marcus frowned. "That's investigator work, Cole. You're security, not law enforcement. I'm head of corporate security now. Part of my job is protecting the company from threats, internal or external. And right now, Brennan is the biggest internal threat we've got." Ethan pulled up Brennan's contact information. "I'm calling him, setting up a meeting. If he refuses, we know he's already circling wagons. And if he agrees, Then we find out how deep this really goes. Ethan dialed Brennan's cell phone, put it on speaker so Marcus could hear. 3 rings, then a smooth baritone voice answered. Ethan Cole, I was wondering when you'd call. The familiarity in Brennan's tone sent warning signals through Ethan's mind. You were expecting me? Of course. You've been investigating the conspiracy, arrested Moss and Kerrigan, rescued Victoria twice now. You're very thorough. I assumed you'd eventually connect the financial trails back to me. Brennan sounded almost amused. So here we are. Here we are, Ethan echoed. You don't sound concerned. Should I be? You have circumstantial evidence of investment conflicts. Interesting, but not criminal. Certainly not enough to support conspiracy charges. A pause. Unless you're calling because you think I'll panic and confess. In which case, I'm afraid you've misjudged me. Ethan glanced at Marcus, who was already recording the call. I'm calling because Victoria thinks you're involved, and I trust her judgment. Victoria is brilliant but paranoid. She sees conspiracies in every board vote that doesn't go her way. Brennan's voice carried patient condescension. Yes, I have investments in aerospace contractors. Yes, some of those investments have benefited when Hale Industries lost bids. But that's business, Mr. Cole. Risk diversification. Any competent financial advisor would recommend the same strategy. Did your financial advisor also recommend hiring people to drug and kidnap the CEO? Silence on the line, longer than comfortable. When Brennan spoke again, the amusement was gone. I had nothing to do with that. Whatever Park and the others planned, they did it without my knowledge or consent. But you knew they were planning something. I knew there were concerns about Victoria's leadership. I knew several board members felt she was taking the company in a dangerous direction. But drugging, kidnapping, staged suicide? Brennan's voice hardened. That's not corporate strategy. That's criminal insanity, and I want no part of it. Marcus mouthed, he's deflecting to Ethan, who nodded. Classic strategy. Admit to the lesser crime while denying the greater one. Brennan was acknowledging he'd been part of discussions about removing Victoria, but distancing himself from the methods used. So you're saying you wanted Victoria removed but had nothing to do with how Park tried to accomplish it, Ethan said. Precisely. I supported a vote of no confidence, a structured transition, perhaps a generous severance package to ease her departure, civilized solutions. Brennan paused. What Park did was barbaric. If I'd known, I would have stopped it. Would you? Ethan let skepticism color his voice. Because from where I'm sitting, you profit enormously from Victoria's removal. The Pentagon contract goes to your competitor. Your investments increase in value. You get a compliant CEO who will let you continue steering contracts toward your personal portfolio. That's a pretty strong motive to look the other way while Park got his hands dirty. Motive isn't evidence, Mr. Cole. And I'm not the one who ordered druggings or kidnappings. Park acted on his own, probably with Harrison, Chen, and Volkov. But I was never in that inner circle. I was simply a board member with legitimate business concerns. Ethan changed tactics. Then help us prove it. Give us communication records showing Park kept you in the dark. Financial statements showing you weren't funding the conspiracy. Anything that demonstrates you weren't involved in the criminal elements. Another pause. Brennan was thinking, calculating angles. Why would I do that? Because right now, federal investigators are building a case that includes you. They have financial connections, voting patterns, investment conflicts. When the indictments come down, you're going to be grouped with Park and the others. Conspiracy. Securities fraud. Attempted murder. Ethan let each charge sink in. Unless you can prove you weren't involved in the operational planning, unless you can demonstrate that you were a board member making business decisions, not a conspirator enabling assassination attempts. You're asking me to cooperate with an investigation. I'm giving you a chance to separate yourself from the people who are going to prison. Park's already stopped paying the contractors he hired. The consultant who kidnapped Victoria is giving testimony in exchange for immunity. Moss and Kerrigan are probably negotiating plea deals right now. Ethan drove the point home. The conspiracy is collapsing, Mr. Brennan. Question is whether you go down with it or step aside while there's still time. Silence stretched for 15 seconds. Ethan could almost hear Brennan's mind working through options, weighing risks, calculating outcomes. Finally, what exactly do you want from me? Everything. Communication with Park, Harrison, Chenin, and Volkov. Meeting minutes where Victoria's removal was discussed. Financial records showing if you funded any part of the operation. Phone logs, emails, text messages. Complete transparency in exchange for consideration from federal prosecutors. You're not a prosecutor. You can't make deals. No, but Agent Rivera from the FBI can, and she's very interested in talking to anyone willing to cooperate. Ethan pulled up the agent's contact information on his screen. I can arrange a meeting tonight, informal. You bring your lawyer if you want, but the conversation happens before Park, and the others start cutting their own deals. And if I refuse? Then you take your chances with whatever charges the FBI brings. Based on what we've already given them, I'd estimate you're looking at 10 to 15 years, maybe more if they decide to make an example of you. Brennan exhaled slowly. You're a better negotiator than I expected, Mr. Cole, for a logistics coordinator. Former logistics coordinator. I've been promoted. So I heard. Head of corporate security. Quite a jump. Brennan's tone shifted slightly, becoming more calculated. Tell me, in your new position, will you have influence over internal investigations? Board composition? Strategic security decisions? Ethan saw where this was going. Brennan wasn't just worried about criminal charges. He was worried about losing his board seat, his access to corporate information, his ability to continue profiting from inside knowledge. That depends on how cooperative you are tonight, Ethan said carefully. Victoria's already recommending a complete board restructuring. Anyone involved in the conspiracy gets removed. But if you can prove you weren't part of the operational planning, weren't funding the criminal elements, maybe there's a case for keeping you on in some capacity. Reduced role. Heavy oversight, but not completely removed. It was a bluff. Victoria would never let Brennan stay on the board after this. But Brennan didn't know that, and the possibility of salvaging some portion of his position might be enough to make him talk. I need time to consult with my attorney, Brennan said. You have 2 hours. After that, the FBI moves forward without your cooperation. Ethan checked his watch. It's 7:45 now. Meet me at Hale Industries headquarters, my office, 9:45. Bring your lawyer, bring your records. And Mr. Brennan? Yes? Don't try to destroy evidence between now and then. We've already copied most of your digital communications. If files start disappearing, we'll know. Understood. The line went dead. Marcus looked at Ethan with something approaching admiration. That was either brilliant or incredibly reckless. Probably both. Ethan rubbed his face, exhaustion pulling harder now. Think he'll show? Depends on how scared he is, and how much he thinks he can salvage. Marcus checked his own phone. I'll contact Agent Rivera. Let her know we might have a cooperating witness. She'll want to be here when Brennan arrives. Good. And Marcus? Increase security on the executive floor. If Brennan decides running is better than talking, he might try something desperate. Already on it. Marcus headed for the door, then paused. Cole? You know Victoria's going to want to be here when this goes down. She's in the hospital recovering from 2 assassination attempts. And she's Victoria Hale. You think hospital beds are going to keep her away from the meeting that could end the conspiracy that tried to kill her? Ethan smiled despite himself. Fair point. Call her. Let her know what's happening, but if she insists on coming, she gets a full security detail and stays out of the interrogation room until we've secured Brennan's cooperation. After Marcus left, Ethan sat alone in his office, staring at the evidence files covering his screens. Financial records, communication logs, security footage, witness statements, everything they'd compiled over the last 36 hours. It was comprehensive, damning, enough to destroy careers and send people to prison. But was it enough to end the conspiracy completely? Or were there more layers they hadn't uncovered yet, more conspirators hiding in deeper cover? His phone buzzed. Maya. Dad, when are you coming home? Soon, sweetheart. I've got one more meeting tonight. Should be done by 11. It's almost 8. You haven't slept in like 2 days. I know, but this is important. The last piece of the investigation. After tonight, it's really over. You said that this morning and yesterday. Her voice carried worry wrapped in frustration. Dad, you can't keep doing this. Running on empty. At some point, you're going to crash. I'll crash after the meeting. Promise. Ethan tried to inject lightness into his tone. How was dinner at Sarah's? Fine. Her mom made lasagna. We're watching movies now. A pause. Dad, are you safe? Like really safe? No more people chasing you? Really safe. I'm in my office at headquarters. Marcus has security all over the building, and I'm meeting with someone who wants to cooperate, not fight. You're sure? I'm sure. Another lie, or at least a hopeful exaggeration, but Maya needed reassurance more than honesty right now. Get some sleep, okay? I'll see you tomorrow morning. We'll have breakfast. Pancakes, the ones I always burn. You always burn pancakes. I know. It's tradition. After hanging up, Ethan pulled up the building's security feeds, checking camera coverage on the executive floor, parking garage, lobby, entrances. Everything looked normal. Cleaning crew working through offices, a few employees finishing late projects, Marcus's security team positioned at key access points. At 8:47 p.m., his office door opened. Victoria walked in, flanked by two security guards, still wearing hospital scrubs under a borrowed jacket. She looked exhausted but determined. You should be resting, Ethan said. So should you, but here we are. She lowered herself into the chair across from his desk with the careful precision of someone whose body was still recovering. Marcus told me about Brennan, about the meeting. I needed to be here. Victoria, don't. She held up a hand. I've spent 18 hours in that hospital bed thinking about everyone who betrayed me. Park, Moss, Kerrigan, Harrison, Chen, Volkov, and possibly Brennan. These are people I trusted, people I promoted, people I built this company with. Her voice carried steel beneath the exhaustion. When Brennan walks through that door, I'm going to be in the room. I'm going to hear what he has to say, and then I'm going to decide what happens to him. Ethan understood. This wasn't about revenge. It was about Victoria reclaiming agency after 2 days of being drugged, kidnapped, and nearly murdered. She needed to face her betrayers directly. Okay, he said, but you stay behind the desk with me. Let Marcus and the FBI handle the interrogation. You observe. You listen. But you don't engage unless I say it's safe. Agreed. She studied his face. You look terrible, by the way. Thanks. You're pretty rough yourself. We make quite a pair. Victoria smiled faintly. The CEO who survived assassination and the logistics coordinator turned security chief who saved her. Twice. They'll write business school case studies about this disaster. What not to do, corporate governance edition. More like how to survive when your entire board tries to kill you. Her smile faded. Do you think Brennan will actually cooperate? I think he's scared. Scared people make deals. Ethan pulled up Brennan's financial records again. But I also think he's been playing this game longer than Park or the others. If he's smart, and he is, he's already prepared exit strategies, offshore accounts, document destruction protocols, ways to insulate himself if everything collapsed. So we might not get the full truth tonight. We might not. But we'll get enough to keep building the case, and every piece of cooperation makes it harder for him to backtrack later. At 9:38 p.m., the lobby security station called up. Mr. Cole, you have visitors, Thomas Brennan and his attorney requesting access to the executive floor. Send them up. Ethan stood, straightened his shirt, tried to look more professional than he felt. Beside him, Victoria remained seated, hands folded on the desk, expression carefully neutral. She'd spent decades in boardrooms learning to mask emotion. Now she'd use every bit of that training. Marcus entered first, followed by Agent Rivera, a woman in her 40s with FBI credentials and the kind of sharp eyes that missed nothing. Then came Brennan and his lawyer. Thomas Brennan looked exactly like his photos. Silver-haired, distinguished, expensive suit, slightly rumpled from the late hour. His lawyer was younger, probably 40, carrying a leather briefcase and projecting the quiet confidence of someone who cost $1,000 an hour. Brennan stopped when he saw Victoria. Mrs. Hale, I didn't expect you to be here. I didn't expect half my board to try killing me, Thomas, but here we are. Her voice came cold and precise. Sit down. The lawyer intervened smoothly. My client is here voluntarily to provide information that may assist in ongoing investigations. However, we need assurances that anything he says tonight is considered in the context of cooperation, not self-incrimination. Agent Rivera stepped forward. Mr. Brennan is not currently under arrest. This is an informal conversation. However, I should advise him that anything he says can and will be used in potential prosecution of other parties involved in the conspiracy. And my client's liability, the lawyer pressed, depends on what he tells us and how much of it we can corroborate. Rivera pulled out a recording device. If Mr. Brennan was merely a board member with undisclosed conflicts of interest, that's a civil matter. If he actively participated in planning or funding criminal acts, that's a different conversation entirely. Brennan exchanged a look with his lawyer, who nodded slightly. They'd clearly discussed this approach beforehand. Admit to the civil violations, deny the criminal ones, hope the FBI focused on the bigger fish. I was part of board discussions about removing Victoria as CEO, Brennan began, voice steady. Those discussions started approximately 9 months ago, when she presented her proposal for the Pentagon defense contract. Several board members, myself included, felt the contract was too risky. The scope was massive. The timeline was aggressive. The potential for cost overruns and public scrutiny was significant. So you opposed the contract on business grounds, Ethan said. Initially, yes, but Victoria was determined to pursue it despite our concerns. She saw it as transforming Hale Industries from a parts supplier into a major defense contractor. We saw it as potentially destroying everything we'd built if the contract went badly. Victoria's expression remained neutral, but Ethan saw her hands tighten slightly on the desk. When did business opposition become conspiracy to remove the CEO? Rivera asked. That happened gradually. Brennan shifted in his chair. Harrison started talking about a vote of no confidence. Chen suggested we'd need a replacement ready before any vote. Volkov mentioned that Victoria's personal life might provide leverage if she refused to step down voluntarily. What personal life? Ethan asked sharply. Rumors. Nothing substantive, but Volkov thought if we could find evidence of impropriety, an affair, financial irregularities, something scandalous, we could force a resignation rather than a public board fight. Victoria's voice cut through the room like ice. So you decided to manufacture scandal when you couldn't find real evidence? I didn't manufacture anything, Brennan said quickly. That was Park's idea. He came to us, Harrison, Chen, Volkov, and myself, about 3 months ago with a proposal. He'd identified you as vulnerable because of your isolation. No family, no close personal relationships, no support network outside the company. He said with the right pressure, you could be pushed into a breakdown that would justify removal. Define the right pressure, Rivera said. Brennan hesitated, glancing at his lawyer, who nodded permission to continue. Park suggested creating situations where Victoria would appear unstable. Missed meetings, erratic behavior, poor decision-making. He said he could arrange it through controlled stress and careful documentation. You mean drugging, Ethan said flatly. He never used that word. Not directly. He talked about pharmaceutical assistance and temporary cognitive impairment. I assumed he meant something like, Brennan stopped, seemed to realize how damning his words sounded. I didn't know he was planning to actually poison her. But you suspected, Victoria said. You suspected, and you let it happen anyway. I thought it was corporate strategy. Aggressive, unethical maybe, but not criminal. Brennan's composure was cracking. When I heard about the fundraiser incident, about you being found unconscious, I assumed Park had gone too far. I called Harrison, told him we needed to shut down whatever Park was doing. Harrison said it was already handled, that Moss and Kerrigan had acted without authorization. That's a lie, Victoria said calmly. Moss and Kerrigan were following Park's direct orders, orders that came from discussions you participated in. I never ordered anyone to drug you. But you created the environment where Park felt empowered to do it. Victoria leaned forward slightly. You talked about removing me, about finding leverage, about pharmaceutical assistance. You gave Park the framework and the approval, even if you didn't specify the methods. That makes you complicit, Thomas. Brennan's lawyer intervened. My client has acknowledged poor judgment in the board discussions, but there's a significant difference between discussing strategic options and implementing criminal conspiracy. Unless you have evidence that Mr. Brennan directly funded or ordered the drugging, the kidnapping, or any other criminal act, he can't be held responsible for Park's independent decisions. Rivera looked at Ethan. Do we have that evidence? Ethan pulled up the financial records he'd compiled. Brennan transferred $200,000 to one of the shell companies 3 weeks before the fundraiser. The same shell company that paid the consultant who kidnapped Victoria this morning. Brennan went pale. That was an investment, legitimate business investment, in a company that exists solely to funnel money to corporate operatives. Ethan displayed the transaction history. You wired funds to the same account that paid for drugging, kidnapping, and attempted murder. That's not business investment, Mr. Brennan. That's funding a conspiracy. The lawyer leaned over, whispered urgently to Brennan. A brief conversation, tense and heated, then Brennan slumped back in his chair. I need immunity, he said quietly. Complete immunity from prosecution in exchange for full cooperation. Rivera shook her head. The Justice Department doesn't give complete immunity to people who fund assassination attempts. Best I can offer is consideration for cooperation. You testify against Park, Harrison, Chen, and Volkov. You provide complete documentation. You submit to questioning. We'll recommend reduced charges. But you're not walking away clean from this. How reduced? Depends on how much you give us and how useful it is. If your testimony puts Park and the others away for 20 years, maybe you do 5. Maybe less if your lawyer's good and the judge is sympathetic. Brennan looked at Victoria. What do you want? It was a strange question, intimate and desperate. The betrayer asking his victim what price would satisfy her. Victoria considered him for a long moment. I want the truth. All of it. Every conversation, every email, every dollar you spent trying to destroy me. I want to know exactly how deep this conspiracy went and who else was involved that we haven't identified yet. And then I want you off my board, out of my company, and far enough away that I never have to see your face again. And if I do that, if I give you everything, then I'll tell the prosecutors you cooperated fully, that you were a foolish board member who made terrible decisions but ultimately helped bring the real criminals to justice. Her voice softened fractionally. I won't lie for you, Thomas, but I won't push for maximum punishment either. You'll face consequences. But they'll be proportional to your actual involvement, not to my anger. Brennan nodded slowly. Okay, I'll cooperate. Fully. Everything you want. His lawyer pulled documents from the briefcase. We've prepared a preliminary statement outlining my client's knowledge of the conspiracy, including communication records, financial transactions, and meeting notes from board discussions. This represents complete disclosure as of this evening. Rivera took the documents, began scanning them. Her expression remained neutral, but Ethan saw her eyes widen slightly at something on page 3. Mr. Brennan, according to this, you attended a meeting with Park, Harrison, Chen, and Volkov on October 15th, where the Victoria removal strategy was formally approved. Is that correct? Yes. And at that meeting, Park specifically outlined a timeline that included cognitive impairment event at the fundraiser followed by permanent solution if the first attempt failed? Brennan swallowed hard. Yes, but I thought he was speaking hypothetically, corporate planning language. I didn't realize he meant... You didn't realize that permanent solution meant murder? Victoria's voice came sharp. What exactly did you think he meant, Thomas? I don't know. Forced resignation? Financial settlement? I wasn't thinking clearly. Brennan's face was gray now. You have to understand, we'd been fighting you for months. Every board meeting became a battle. Every strategic decision was a fight. We were exhausted, frustrated, convinced you were driving the company toward disaster. When Park offered a solution, we took it without thinking through the implications. You took it because it benefited you personally, Ethan said. Your investments in the competitor company, your financial stake in seeing Victoria's proposal fail. This wasn't about protecting Hale Industries. It was about protecting your profit margin. Brennan didn't deny it, just sat there, looking like a man watching his life collapse in real time. Rivera closed the documents. Mr. Brennan, I'm placing you under arrest on suspicion of conspiracy to commit corporate fraud, securities violations, and accessory to attempted murder. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. He has an attorney present, the lawyer interjected, and my client will continue cooperating as promised, but he requires formal immunity negotiations before providing testimony. We'll arrange that at the federal building. Rivera nodded to Marcus, who signaled the two security guards. Mr. Brennan, please stand and place your hands behind your back. Brennan stood slowly, looking at Victoria one last time. I'm sorry for all of it. I never wanted it to go this far. But you let it anyway. Victoria's voice carried no forgiveness. That's the part you'll have to live with, Thomas. Not that you wanted me gone, but that you were willing to let me die to make it happen. The guards took Brennan away, his lawyer following, already on his phone arranging bail and immunity negotiations. Rivera gathered the documents, thanked Ethan and Victoria for their cooperation, and promised regular updates as the investigation progressed. Then it was just Ethan, Victoria, and Marcus in the quiet office, the weight of the last 48 hours finally settling into something like closure. Is it over? Victoria asked quietly. Really over. The conspiracy is broken, Marcus said. Park, Moss, Kerrigan, Harrison, Chen, Volkov, and Brennan, all arrested or cooperating. The Pentagon contract is secure. The board will be restructured. From an operational standpoint, yes, it's over. Victoria looked at Ethan. What do you think? I think we got everyone directly involved, but conspiracies leave scars. There will be lawsuits, investigations, media coverage, shareholder pressure. The next 6 months are going to be brutal, even without active threats. He paused. But the immediate danger is gone. You can go home, sleep in your own bed, stop looking over your shoulder. Can I? Victoria smiled faintly. After this, I'm not sure I'll ever stop looking over my shoulder. Then I'll look with you. Ethan stood, offered his hand. That's what you hired me for. She took his hand, let him help her to her feet. They stood there for a moment, exhausted and battered, but somehow still standing, still together. Thank you, Victoria said, for everything. For believing me when you had every reason to walk away. For fighting when it would have been easier to let them win. For being someone I could trust when my entire world was trying to kill me. Someone had to. Ethan released her hand. Besides, Maya would have killed me if I'd let anything happen to you. She's been following the news coverage. I think you're her hero now. I'm nobody's hero, just a CEO who survived corporate warfare. Same thing sometimes. Marcus cleared his throat. Hate to interrupt, but it's nearly 11 p.m. and both of you need medical attention, real food, and about 20 hours of sleep. Can I drive you somewhere? Hospital? Home? Anywhere with beds and no board members? Victoria laughed, a real laugh, breaking through the exhaustion. Home. My actual home. The penthouse I haven't seen in 2 days. She looked at Ethan. What about you? I promised Maya pancakes in the morning, so I'm going home, sleeping for 6 hours if I'm lucky, then burning breakfast like tradition demands. Sounds perfect. Victoria moved toward the door, then paused. Ethan? When this settles, when the investigations are done, and the media moves on to the next scandal, I'd like to have dinner. Actual dinner. Not corporate events or emergency meetings. Just two people who've been through hell together and deserve a decent meal. It was an invitation wrapped in professional courtesy, but Ethan heard the real question beneath it. After everything they'd shared, after the trust forged in crisis and the understanding built through survival, was there something more? Something worth exploring when the danger finally passed? I'd like that, he said simply. Good, she smiled. It's a date. Eventually. Marcus drove Victoria home first, full security detail following in a second vehicle. Then he circled back for Ethan, who'd spent the last 20 minutes documenting the night's events for the federal investigation and securing all evidence files. The drive through Seattle's late-night streets was quiet. Rain finally stopped, the city cleaning itself for another day of commerce and ambition. Ethan watched the lights slide past, thinking about Maya, about pancakes, about the simple joy of going home to someone who loved him. His phone buzzed, text from Victoria. Made it home. Security cleared the penthouse. Everything's locked down. Thank you again. Sleep well. He typed back, you too. See you Monday. We'll start rebuilding. Her response came immediately. We will. Together. Marcus pulled up to Ethan's modest house in Ballard, engine idling. You good from here? Yeah, thanks for everything, Marcus, for believing me, for backing me up, for not letting me get killed. Part of the job, Marcus grinned, though technically keeping you alive was your job. I was just helping. Semantics. Ethan climbed out, stood in his driveway, looked at the house where Maya was probably still awake despite the late hour, waiting to make sure her father really came home. The porch light was on. She always left it on when he worked late. He walked to the door, key in hand, and paused. Tomorrow there would be pancakes and college applications and normal life resuming. Next week there would be board meetings and investigations and rebuilding a company scarred by betrayal. But tonight, for the first time in 48 hours, Ethan Cole felt like he could breathe. He opened the door to find Maya on the couch, laptop open, pretending not to have been watching for him through the window. Hey, sweetheart. She closed the laptop, stood, and hugged him hard enough to hurt. You're okay. I'm okay. Promise? Promise. She pulled back, studied his face. You look terrible, Dad. So I've been told. He smiled. But I'm here. It's over. And tomorrow I'm making you the most burned pancakes you've ever seen. Can't wait. They stood there in the quiet house, father and daughter, survivors of different battles, holding on to each other because that's what family did. Outside, Seattle slept and dreamed and prepared for whatever came next. But inside, in this moment, everything that mattered was right here, safe, together, home. The pancakes were, predictably, burned. Ethan stood at the stove Saturday morning, spatula in hand, watching smoke curl from edges that had gone from golden to charcoal in the 30 seconds he'd spent checking his phone. Maya sat at the kitchen table, coffee in hand, trying not to laugh. You know, she said, for someone who just saved $1 billion company, you're remarkably bad at basic cooking. It's a gift. Ethan scraped the ruined pancake onto a plate. Besides, you like them crispy. I like them edible, Dad. There's a difference. He started another batch, this time keeping his attention on the griddle instead of the news alerts flooding his phone. The story had broken overnight, major media outlets running headlines about the Hale Industries conspiracy, federal arrests, attempted murder of a CEO. Ethan's name appeared in several articles, though most focused on Victoria as the survivor and the board members as the conspirators. Are they saying anything about you? Maya asked, reading over his shoulder. Just that I'm head of corporate security. Helped with the investigation. Ethan flipped a pancake that actually looked decent. Nothing about the chases or the warehouse or any of the interesting parts. Good. I'd rather you be boring and alive than exciting and dead. Wise philosophy. They ate breakfast in comfortable silence, the kind that came from years of just the two of them against the world. Ethan had raised Maya alone since she was 9, navigating single parenthood through middle school drama and high school stress and now college applications. It hadn't been easy, but sitting here, watching her drown burned pancakes in syrup and scroll through her phone, he couldn't imagine having done it any other way. So what happens now? Maya asked eventually. With work, I mean. Do you go back to normal, or is everything different? Everything's different. New position, new responsibilities, new relationship with Victoria. Ethan caught himself. Professional relationship, boss and security chief. Maya's eyebrow rose. Is that what we're calling it? That's what it is. Dad, I saw the photos online, the way you were carrying her, the way she looked at you in that press conference yesterday. She set down her fork. I'm 17, not stupid. There's something there. Ethan considered lying, deflecting, changing the subject, but Maya had earned honesty through everything she'd endured. Her mother's abandonment, the years of financial struggle, the fear of the last 48 hours. Maybe there is, he admitted, but it's complicated. She's my boss. I'm her employee. The power dynamic alone makes anything beyond professional problematic. Or maybe you both just went through something traumatic together and formed a connection that's worth exploring. Maya's voice carried the wisdom of someone who'd learned early that life was too short for convenient timing. I'm not saying marry her tomorrow, Dad, but don't dismiss it just because the situation is complicated. Everything worth having is complicated. When did you get so smart? I had a good teacher, she smiled. even if he can't cook pancakes. Ethan's phone buzzed. Text from Marcus. Board meeting scheduled for Monday 9 a.m. Victoria wants you there. Full executive attendance. We're rebuilding the leadership structure. Another text followed immediately. Also, media's camped outside headquarters. Prepare for questions if you come in this weekend. Ethan showed Maya the messages. Looks like normal is going to take a while to arrive. Good. Normal's overrated anyway. She stood, started clearing dishes. But Dad? When things do settle, when the investigations are done and the media moves on, you should take that dinner she offered. You deserve something good after all this. I'll think about it. Don't think too long. Life doesn't wait for perfect timing. She left for Sarah's house an hour later, backpack full of college application materials and a promise to check in every few hours. Ethan watched her drive away, then returned to his laptop and the mountain of work waiting for him. Federal investigators had sent follow-up questions about the timeline, the evidence, the conversations with Brennan. Marcus needed security protocols updated for the new board structure. Victoria's assistant had forwarded 3 requests for interviews with major news outlets. And buried in his personal email was a message from Victoria herself, sent at 6 a.m. Ethan couldn't sleep, kept thinking about everything. I know we said Monday for the debrief, but would you be willing to meet today? My place, 2 p.m.? I need to talk through some decisions before the board meeting, and I trust your judgment more than anyone else's right now. No pressure if you need the weekend to recover, but if you're available, I'd appreciate it. Ethan stared at the message, reading between the lines. Victoria Hale didn't send personal emails asking for advice on weekends. She had assistants for scheduling, executives for strategic counsel, consultants for major decisions. If she was reaching out directly, on a Saturday, to someone she'd known primarily as her logistics coordinator until 3 days ago, it meant something beyond professional consultation. He typed back, I'll be there, 2 p.m. Her response came within seconds. Thank you. The penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of a luxury building in Madison Park, the kind of place where security guards screened visitors and elevators required key cards for access. Ethan arrived at 1:55, gave his name to the concierge, and was directed to a private elevator that opened directly into Victoria's residence. The space was exactly what he'd expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Washington, minimalist furniture in grays and whites, art that probably cost more than his annual salary. But there were also unexpected touches. Books stacked on side tables, reading glasses left on a newspaper, a laptop open on the kitchen counter, showing what looked like financial projections. This wasn't just a showplace. Someone actually lived here. Victoria emerged from somewhere deeper in the penthouse, dressed casually in jeans and a sweater, looking more rested than she had Friday night, but still carrying the exhaustion of someone who'd survived multiple attempts on her life. Thanks for coming, she said. Coffee? Please. She poured 2 cups from an espresso machine that probably cost more than Ethan's car, handed him one, and gestured toward the living room. They sat on opposite ends of a long couch, the formality of professional distance warring with the intimacy of everything they'd shared. How are you feeling? Ethan asked. Physically? Better. The drugs are mostly out of my system. Emotionally? She took a slow sip of coffee. I'm angry. Betrayed, questioning every relationship, every decision, every assumption I've made about who I could trust. That's understandable. Is it? Because it feels like paranoia, like I'm turning into someone who sees conspiracies in every board vote and assassins in every coffee cup. She set down her mug. I built this company by trusting people, Ethan, by believing that competence and loyalty went together, and now I'm learning that half my executive team was actively trying to destroy me. Not half. 7 people out of a company with thousands of employees. The vast majority were exactly what you thought, competent and loyal. 7 people nearly succeeded in killing me. But they didn't, because one person decided to trust his instincts and protect you instead of following protocol. Ethan met her eyes. That has to count for something. Victoria was quiet for a moment, then smiled faintly. Maya's right about you, you know. You've been talking to my daughter? She called this morning, wanted to make sure I was okay. We talked for about 20 minutes. Victoria's expression softened. She's remarkable, Ethan. Smart, perceptive, fiercely protective of you. You've done an incredible job raising her. She's done most of the work herself. I just tried not to screw it up too badly. She said you taught her that doing the right thing matters more than doing the safe thing. That sometimes you have to risk everything for the people who need you. Victoria leaned forward slightly. Where did you learn that? Ethan thought about the question, about the years before Maya, before Seattle, before he'd become someone who coordinated logistics and avoided conflict. Mexico City, 2009, he said quietly. I was doing executive protection for an oil company VP. Kidnapping threat from a cartel. Standard risk assessment said we should evacuate him immediately, leave the local staff behind. But the local staff had families, homes, lives that didn't include running to America when things got dangerous. He paused, remembering. I convinced the VP to delay evacuation by 48 hours so we could relocate the local employees first. Company said I was risking the principal's life for people who didn't matter. I said everyone mattered, got fired for it. But you did it anyway. I did it anyway. The VP survived. So did the local staff. And I learned that following protocol isn't the same as doing the right thing. Victoria nodded slowly. That's why you didn't take me to the hospital Thursday night. Why you hid me in your office instead of calling Marcus. You knew protocol would get me killed, so you improvised. More or less. And yesterday, when you chased that van instead of waiting for backup, you were improvising again. Also accurate. You're going to give me a heart attack, Ethan Cole. But she was smiling. Though I suppose that's better than being murdered by my own board. They sat in companionable silence, drinking coffee, watching afternoon light play across Lake Washington. Eventually, Victoria spoke again, her tone shifting to something more businesslike. The board meeting Monday is going to be brutal. Park's attorney is already leaking stories to the press about how this was a misunderstanding, how the arrests are corporate overreach. Harrison, Chen, and Volkov are claiming they were manipulated by Park and Brennan. Moss and Kerrigan are negotiating plea deals that minimize their involvement. She set down her coffee cup with more force than necessary. Everyone's trying to save themselves by rewriting what happened, and I need to make sure the real story doesn't get buried. What do you need from me? Testimony, documentation, your perspective on what actually happened. Victoria pulled out a tablet, displayed an outline. The board is voting Monday on a complete restructuring. 7 seats are vacant now. Park, Moss, Kerrigan, Harrison, Chen, Volkov, and Brennan are all suspended pending criminal proceedings. I need to fill those seats with people I trust, people who won't try to kill me. That's a low bar. You'd be surprised how many candidates fail to meet it. She scrolled through a list of names. I'm thinking of offering you a board seat. Ethan nearly dropped his coffee. What? Head of corporate security with a board seat, full voting rights, strategic input, executive compensation. Victoria watched his reaction carefully. You've proven you understand this company, that you can make critical decisions under pressure, and that you're willing to prioritize the organization's well-being over personal safety. That's exactly what I need in board leadership. Victoria, I was a logistics coordinator 4 days ago. I don't have the experience for... Experience didn't stop Park from orchestrating a conspiracy. It didn't stop Brennan from funding an assassination. It didn't stop 7 educated, experienced executives from trying to murder their CEO. She leaned forward. What stopped them was you. Someone without board experience or executive credentials. Someone who just decided the right thing mattered more than the safe thing. This is insane. Probably. But I'm done with conventional wisdom. Conventional wisdom nearly got me killed. Victoria's voice carried absolute certainty. I need people around me who I can trust completely. Right now, that's a very short list. You're on it. Marcus is on it. Maybe 3 other employees across the entire company. That's not enough to rebuild a functional board. Ethan tried to process the offer. A board seat meant power, compensation, influence over one of the country's major defense contractors. It also meant responsibility, scrutiny, and the kind of corporate politics he'd spent 6 years avoiding. Can I think about it? He asked. Of course, but I need an answer by Monday morning. The board vote happens at 9, and I want to present a complete slate of nominees. Who else are you considering? Victoria pulled up another list. Department heads who've proven themselves over years, external advisors with military and aerospace backgrounds, a few academics with expertise in corporate governance and ethics, people with actual qualifications beyond didn't try to murder the CEO. So I'd be the token unqualified nominee. You'd be the nominee who proved himself when it mattered most. She held his gaze. Ethan, I'm not offering you this position out of gratitude or sentiment. I'm offering it because you've demonstrated exactly the kind of judgment and integrity I need in corporate leadership. Yes, you lack traditional qualifications, but traditional qualifications were worthless when the conspiracy started. What mattered was character, and yours is exactly what this company needs. I need to talk to Maya. This affects her too, the hours, the scrutiny, the target it might paint on our family. Understood. Take the weekend. Think it through. Talk to your daughter. Victoria stood, moved to the windows. But Ethan, whatever you decide, I want you to know that what you did this week, saving my life, risking yours, refusing to let them win, that changed everything. For me, for this company, for what's possible when someone actually gives a damn about doing the right thing. Ethan joined her at the windows, looking out at Seattle's skyline. Somewhere in those towers, federal agents were building cases against 7 people who tried to destroy the woman standing beside him. Somewhere in those streets, Maya was working on college applications, planning a future she believed her father deserved to be part of. And somewhere in the city's corporate infrastructure, a defense contractor was preparing to rebuild itself from the ashes of betrayal. When you talked about dinner, Ethan said carefully, was that a professional invitation or something else? Victoria turned to face him. I don't know yet. Ask me again when the investigations are done, when the board is stable, when we're not running on adrenaline and survival instinct. She paused. But I know I want to find out. If you do. I do. Then we'll figure it out, together. Eventually. She smiled. After you decide about the board seat, after the media circus dies down, after we both get more than 6 hours of sleep in a row. So in about 6 months? Optimistically. They stood at the window until the afternoon light began to fade, talking through board nominations and security protocols and the 1,000 details of rebuilding a company scarred by conspiracy. It was professional, strategic, exactly what a CEO and her security chief should be discussing. But underneath the business conversation ran something deeper, an understanding forged in crisis, a trust earned through shared survival, and the possibility of something more when timing finally allowed. Ethan left at 6 p.m., drove home through evening traffic, and found Maya already back from Sarah's, working on her laptop at the kitchen table. How was your meeting? She asked without looking up. Complicated. Victoria offered me a board seat. Now Maya looked up. Seriously? Seriously. Full voting rights, strategic authority, executive compensation. She wants an answer by Monday. What did you say? That I needed to think about it, talk to you. Ethan sat across from her. It's a massive opportunity, but it also means more hours, more responsibility, more visibility. That affects both of us. Maya closed her laptop, considered him carefully. Do you want it? Part of me does. The part that wants to help Victoria rebuild what was almost destroyed. The part that believes companies should be run by people who care about doing right instead of doing profitable. And the other part? The other part wants to go back to logistics coordination. Predictable hours. No one trying to kill anyone. Boring, safe, simple. He met his daughter's eyes. I've spent 17 years building a stable life for you. This board seat could destabilize everything we've worked for. Or it could show me that stability isn't the only thing worth having. Maya reached across the table, took his hand. Dad, you've taught me to be careful, to plan ahead, to make safe choices. And those are good lessons. But this week you also taught me that sometimes the right choice is the dangerous one. That sometimes you have to risk stability for the chance to actually make a difference. I don't want my choices to hurt you. Your choices have never hurt me. Mom's choices hurt me. Your choices kept me safe, gave me a home, showed me what it looks like when someone actually shows up every day. She squeezed his hand. Take the board seat, Dad. Help Victoria rebuild. Make Hale Industries into something worth being proud of. I'll be fine. Better than fine. I'll be proud of you. Ethan felt something catch in his throat. When did you get so wise? I had a good teacher. She grinned. even if he burns pancakes. That night, Ethan drafted an email to Victoria accepting the board nomination. He revised it 3 times, trying to strike the right balance between professional and personal, between confidence and humility. Finally, he settled on simple honesty. Victoria, I accept. I don't know if I'm qualified for this, but I know I want to help rebuild what they tried to destroy. I'll do my best to justify your trust. See you Monday. Ethan. Her response came within minutes. Thank you. That's all I needed to hear. The rest we'll figure out together. Get some sleep. Monday starts early. V. Monday morning arrived with rain and media vans camped outside Hale Industries headquarters. Ethan navigated through reporters shouting questions, made it to the executive floor where Marcus and 6 other security personnel were maintaining a perimeter. Ready for this? Marcus asked. Not even slightly. Good. Means you're thinking clearly. Marcus walked him toward the boardroom. Victoria arrived an hour ago. She's been prepping with legal counsel. The remaining board members are already inside. Federal observers are attending to ensure compliance with investigation requirements, and about 30 journalists are trying to bribe their way into the building. Just another Monday. The boardroom was exactly as imposing as Ethan remembered from the brief glimpse he'd had Friday. Mahogany table, leather chairs, wall of windows overlooking Seattle. But now 7 seats sat conspicuously empty, nameplates removed, physical evidence of the conspiracy's scope. Victoria stood at the head of the table, looking every inch the CEO who'd survived assassination. Professional suit, composed expression, absolute authority in her bearing. When Ethan entered, she nodded acknowledgement but didn't break stride in her conversation with 2 remaining board members. Ethan took a seat along the wall with other executives, watching as the room filled. Department heads, legal counsel, federal observers with notebooks and recording devices. Everyone here understood this wasn't a normal board meeting. This was the rebuilding of corporate governance after catastrophic betrayal. At 9 a.m. exactly, Victoria called the meeting to order. Thank you all for being here under these extraordinary circumstances. As you know, 7 members of this board are currently suspended pending federal criminal proceedings. Their seats are vacant. Their responsibilities are unfulfilled. And this company cannot function effectively without proper board governance. She pulled up a presentation on the wall screen. I'm proposing emergency appointments to fill these vacancies immediately, subject to shareholder ratification at our next annual meeting. The remaining board members shifted uncomfortably. One raised his hand, Gerald Foster, longtime member who'd somehow avoided involvement in the conspiracy. Mrs. Hale, while I appreciate the urgency, emergency appointments without full vetting could expose us to exactly the kind of problems we just experienced. Which is why I'm proposing individuals who've already been vetted through years of service to this company or who've demonstrated extraordinary judgment under pressure. Victoria advanced the slide. First nomination, Marcus Chen, current head of executive protection. 10 years with Hale Industries, flawless security record, expert in crisis management. Marcus stood from his position by the door, clearly surprised. Victoria must have approached him over the weekend, same as Ethan. Second nomination, Dr. Sarah Okonkwo, Director of Research and Development. 15 years with the company, led 3 major innovation initiatives, published expert on aerospace technology. A woman in the front row nodded acknowledgement. Victoria continued through 5 more nominations, all internal candidates with proven track records, all people she'd clearly vetted for loyalty as much as competence. Then she reached the final slide. Last nomination, Ethan Cole, Head of Corporate Security. 6 years with Hale Industries and Logistics Coordination, recently appointed to security leadership after demonstrating exceptional judgment during the recent crisis. While Mr. Cole lacks traditional board experience, he has proven himself capable of critical decision-making under extreme pressure. The room went quiet. Ethan felt every eye turned toward him, some curious, some skeptical, some openly hostile. Foster spoke again. Mrs. Hale, with all due respect, Mr. Cole was a mid-level logistics coordinator until last week. Appointing him to the board based on a few days of crisis management seems, based on his saving my life twice and exposing a conspiracy that would have destroyed this company, Victoria's voice carried steel. Mr. Foster, traditional qualifications didn't prevent 7 experienced executives from attempting to murder me. What prevented that was Mr. Cole's integrity, judgment, and willingness to prioritize what was right over what was safe. Those are exactly the qualifications I want in board leadership. Another board member, Patricia Wong, leaned forward. But surely there are other candidates with both crisis management experience and corporate governance background. Why Mr. Cole specifically? Victoria met Ethan's eyes across the room. Because I trust him, completely, without reservation. And after what this board just put me through, trust is the most valuable qualification anyone can offer. The silence stretched. Then Foster spoke again, his tone softening. Mrs. Hale, we all understand what you've been through. The trauma, the betrayal, the fear. But building a board based purely on trust, without regard for experience or qualifications, that's how companies fail. And building a board based purely on credentials without regard for character is how CEOs get murdered. Victoria's voice didn't rise, but the force behind it filled the room. I'm not proposing we ignore qualifications. Dr. Okonkwo has a PhD and 15 years of innovation leadership. Marcus Chen has a decade of security expertise. The other 5 nominees have similar credentials, but Mr. Cole brings something none of them have. Proof that when everything falls apart, when the system fails, when the people you trust betray you, he'll still do the right thing. Wong exchanged glances with Foster, then nodded slowly. I move to approve all 8 nominations en bloc, subject to the usual background checks and shareholder ratification. Second, Foster said. The vote was unanimous. Just like that, Ethan Cole went from logistics coordinator to member of the board of directors at a billion-dollar defense contractor. The rest of the meeting proceeded with remarkable efficiency, approving interim policies to prevent future conspiracies, establishing oversight committees, discussing the federal investigation's timeline. Through it all, Ethan sat in his new seat at the table, trying to process the weight of what had just happened. When the meeting finally adjourned 3 hours later, Victoria caught his arm as executives filed out. Welcome to the board, Mr. Cole. I still think you're insane for appointing me. Probably, but I've been thinking about what Maya said, that everything worth having is complicated. Building the board I actually need instead of the board that looks good on paper, that's complicated, but it's worth having. She's going to be insufferable when I tell her you quoted her in your decision-making process. Good. Smart daughters should be insufferable occasionally. Keeps their fathers honest. Victoria smiled. There's a press conference at 2 p.m. You don't have to attend, but the media will have questions about the new board composition. Will they ask about us? About the photos, the rumors, the scandal Park tried to manufacture? Probably. How do you want to handle that? Ethan considered the question. The easy answer was denial. Claim it was all fabrication, that there was nothing between them beyond professional respect. The honest answer was more complicated. I want to tell them the truth, he said. That you're my boss, I'm your employee, and what happened last week was about survival and trust, not romance or scandal. That anything beyond that is private and remains so until we both decide otherwise. And if they push, if they demand to know if there's something more, then we tell them some questions don't deserve answers. Ethan met her eyes. I'm not ashamed of what happened, Victoria. I'm not ashamed of carrying you to safety or protecting you when others wouldn't. If they want to make that scandalous, that's their problem. Spoken like someone who's about to face his first press conference as a board member, she touched his arm briefly. Thank you, Ethan, for everything. For saying yes to this impossible job. For trusting me enough to risk your career on my judgment. Someone had to. The press conference was exactly as brutal as Ethan expected. Reporters shouted questions about the conspiracy, the arrests, Victoria's survival. Most of the questions went to Victoria, but several targeted Ethan directly. Mr. Cole, critics say you're unqualified for a board position. How do you respond? Ethan stepped to the microphone, channeling every bit of confidence he'd learned from 17 years of faking certainty for his daughter. I'd say they're probably right. I don't have an MBA. I haven't run a major division. I haven't spent decades climbing corporate ladders, but I have something they can't teach in business school. I know how to recognize the right thing to do when every protocol says to do something else. And in the last week, that skill saved a CEO's life and exposed a conspiracy that would have destroyed this company. If that's not qualification enough, I don't know what is. There are photos of you carrying Mrs. Hale through a parking garage. Can you explain the nature of your relationship? Victoria took this one. Mr. Cole saved my life when I'd been drugged by members of my own executive team. The nature of our relationship is that I trust him absolutely, and he's proven that trust was well placed. Anything beyond that is private and will remain so. Are you saying there is something beyond that? I'm saying some questions are designed to create scandal rather than reveal truth. Next question. The press conference lasted 45 minutes. By the end, Ethan was exhausted, but he'd held his ground, refused to be intimidated, and made it clear that he wasn't going anywhere, despite what critics thought of his qualifications. Afterward, Marcus found him in the hallway. Not bad for your first time facing the media vultures. I've had practice dealing with difficult audiences. Maya went through a phase at 14 where everything I said was wrong. Compared to that, hostile reporters are easy. Fair point. Marcus checked his phone. Federal investigators want to meet tomorrow. Follow-up questions about Brennan's testimony. You available? I'll make time. What's the status on the others? Park's attorney is still claiming misunderstanding and corporate politics. But the evidence is overwhelming. Prosecutors are confident on conspiracy charges. Moss and Kerrigan are cooperating fully. Both signed plea agreements this morning. Harrison, Chen, and Volkov are fighting it, but their attorneys are already discussing settlement options. Marcus smiled grimly. It's falling apart for them. Exactly like it should. And Brennan? He's been the most cooperative. Full testimony, complete document disclosure, willing to testify against all of them. Prosecutors are recommending 5 years with possibility of parole after 3. Marcus paused. Victoria put in a word supporting the lighter sentence, said he helped end the conspiracy even if he participated in starting it. That's generous of her. She said something about not letting anger override judgment, that Brennan made terrible choices but deserved proportional consequences, not vindictive ones. Marcus looked at Ethan carefully. She's different now since all this happened. More careful about who she trusts, but also more willing to show vulnerability to the people who've earned it. That's your influence, I think. I doubt that. Don't. You showed her that trust is a risk worth taking when it's placed in the right people. That's not a small thing for someone who just survived betrayal from half her executive team. That evening, Ethan drove home to find Maya waiting with takeout Chinese food and a bottle of sparkling cider. What's this? He asked. Celebration. You're officially a board member at a major defense contractor. That deserves better than burned pancakes. She set out plates, poured cider into wine glasses. How was the press conference? Brutal, but survivable. They asked about my qualifications, about Victoria, about the photos. And what did you say? That I'm probably unqualified by traditional standards, but I know how to do the right thing when it matters. That Victoria and I have a professional relationship built on trust. That some questions don't deserve answers. Very diplomatic. Maya raised her glass. To doing the right thing, even when it's complicated. To complicated things that are worth having, Ethan added, echoing Victoria's words. They clinked glasses, ate Chinese food, and talked about Maya's college applications and Ethan's new responsibilities, and how strange it was that their lives had changed so dramatically in less than a week. It was normal and comfortable and exactly what Ethan needed after days of crisis and cameras. Later, after Maya had gone to bed, Ethan sat on the porch watching rain fall on his quiet neighborhood. His phone buzzed. Text from Victoria. Made it home. Security cleared everything. First night sleeping peacefully in my own bed since Thursday. Thank you for making that possible. He typed back. Someone had to. Sleep well. You too. See you tomorrow. We have a company to rebuild. Together, he added. Together, she confirmed. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of federal interviews, board meetings, security protocol updates, and media management. Moss and Kerrigan were formally sentenced, 8 years and 6 years respectively, with cooperation credit. Harrison, Chen, and Volkov took plea agreements rather than face trial, 10 years each, eligible for parole after 7. Park refused to negotiate, insisted on his innocence, and was scheduled for trial in 6 months. Brennan's sentencing hearing was the last. Ethan attended as a witness, sitting in the gallery while prosecutors and defense attorneys argued over a man who'd helped fund an assassination attempt, but ultimately cooperated in exposing it. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s who'd clearly seen too many corporate criminals, listened to both sides, then addressed Brennan directly. Mr. Brennan, you participated in a conspiracy to remove a CEO through drugging, kidnapping, and potentially murder. Your actions endangered not just Mrs. Hale, but the thousands of employees whose livelihoods depend on Hale Industries' stability. However, you also cooperated fully once the conspiracy was exposed, providing testimony and evidence that helped secure convictions against your co-conspirators. This cooperation doesn't erase your guilt, but it demonstrates some capacity for taking responsibility. She paused, looked down at her notes. I'm sentencing you to 5 years in federal prison, with eligibility for parole after 3 years served. Additionally, you're banned from serving on any corporate board for 15 years following your release, and you'll forfeit all stock options and retirement benefits from Hale Industries. The gavel came down. Court is adjourned. Brennan stood slowly, looked across the courtroom to where Victoria sat beside Ethan. He mouthed something, might have been sorry or thank you, or just acknowledgement that justice had been served. Then the marshals led him away. Outside the courthouse, Victoria stood in the rain, watching Seattle's skyline emerge from clouds. How do you feel? Ethan asked. Relieved, angry, sad. She turned to face him. Brennan was someone I trusted, someone I worked with for years, and he chose profit over principle. That's going to stay with me for a long time. But he also chose cooperation over denial in the end. That has to count for something. It does. It's why I supported the lighter sentence. But it doesn't erase what he did. Victoria pulled her coat tighter against the rain. Is it wrong that I want him punished but also hope he finds some kind of redemption? That's not wrong. That's human. They stood together in the rain until Marcus pulled up with the car. The drive back to headquarters was quiet, both of them processing the end of the criminal proceedings and the beginning of whatever came next. A month after Brennan's sentencing, the board approved Victoria's restructuring plan. The Pentagon contract moved forward without opposition. Hale Industries stock recovered from the scandal-driven dip. And slowly, carefully, the company began to look like something functional again. Ethan settled into his dual role as security chief and board member, learning corporate governance while maintaining the security protocols that kept Victoria safe. It was exhausting, demanding, and nothing like the quiet logistics work he'd done for 6 years. But it mattered. Every decision about board composition or security clearance or strategic direction felt like it actually mattered. One Thursday evening in early March, Victoria stopped by his office after the building had mostly emptied. You have dinner plans? She asked. Maya's at a college visit overnight. Sarah's parents are driving them, so no plans. Good. I'm taking you to dinner. Actual dinner. Not a board meeting or security briefing or media strategy session. She smiled. Remember when I said we'd figure out the complicated stuff when things settled down? I remember. Things have settled down. Investigations are done. Board is functional. Media has moved on to other scandals. So I'm asking you to dinner, Ethan Cole. Not as your boss, not as the CEO you saved, just as someone who wants to spend an evening with someone she trusts and likes, and maybe wants to know better. Ethan felt something shift in his chest, anticipation mixed with caution, hope tempered by reality. That's still complicated. The power dynamic, the optics, what it means for my position, all true. All legitimate concerns. All things we'll have to navigate carefully if we decide this is worth pursuing. Victoria stepped closer. But we've already survived a conspiracy, multiple assassination attempts, federal investigations, and hostile media coverage. I think we can handle complicated. Maya would agree with you. Smart daughter. Victoria's expression softened. So? Dinner? As two people who've been through hell together and deserve something good. Ethan thought about all the reasons to say no. Professional boundaries. Corporate ethics. The risk to everything they'd built. Then he thought about Maya's advice, that life doesn't wait for perfect timing, that stability isn't the only thing worth having, that sometimes the right choice is the dangerous one. Okay, he said. Dinner, as two people figuring out complicated things together. Perfect. I know a place. Quiet. Good food. No corporate spies or board members. Sounds ideal. They left separately, maintaining professional distance for anyone watching, and met at a small Italian restaurant in Fremont that Victoria promised was owned by people who valued discretion. The kind of place where Seattle's powerful came when they wanted privacy instead of pageantry. Dinner was easy in a way Ethan hadn't expected. They talked about Maya's college applications and Victoria's upcoming keynote speech, and the absurdity of being Seattle's most photographed CEO and security chief. They talked about books and bad movies, and what it was like growing up with expectations neither of them had chosen. They didn't talk about work or the conspiracy, or whether this dinner meant they were starting something that would complicate their professional relationship beyond repair. Over dessert, Victoria reached across the table, took his hand. "I know this is risky," she said quietly. "I know we're probably making things harder than they need to be, but Ethan, I haven't felt this comfortable with someone in years, maybe ever. And I don't want to lose that because we're too scared of complications." "I don't want to lose it either." Ethan squeezed her hand. "But I need to be honest. If this becomes something, if we cross from professional to personal, Maya comes first. Always. She's been through too much already. I won't risk her stability for any relationship, no matter how right it feels. I wouldn't want you to. Your dedication to Maya is one of the things I admire most about you." Victoria's thumb traced circles on his palm. "What if we take this slowly? Keep things private until we're sure. Make decisions together about what works for both our lives. No pressure, no expectations. Just two people figuring out if complicated is worth the effort." "I can do that." "Good," she smiled. "Because I'd really like to do this again. Maybe next time somewhere less secretive. Maybe eventually somewhere we don't have to worry about photographers or board members or what people think." "Eventually sounds good." They left the restaurant separately again, maintaining the discretion that their positions demanded. But as Ethan drove home through Seattle's rain-soaked streets, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Not the cautious hope of a single father trying to build stability, but the expansive hope of someone who'd survived chaos and found connection on the other side. His phone buzzed at a red light. Text from Victoria. "Thank you for taking a chance on complicated. It was worth it." He typed back. "First of many, I hope." "Definitely." "Sleep well, Ethan." "You too, Victoria." 2 months later, Maya graduated high school with honors and acceptance letters from 6 universities. She chose Stanford, far enough for independence, close enough for weekend visits. The week before she left for orientation, she cornered Ethan in the kitchen. "So are you and Victoria actually dating, or are you still calling it figuring out complicated things?" Ethan looked up from the college packing list he'd been obsessively reviewing. "We're dating, quietly, trying to keep it private until we're sure this is something sustainable." "Dad, you've been quietly dating for 2 months. You have dinner every Thursday. She came to my graduation. You smile at your phone when she texts. Everyone already knows." "Everyone?" "The entire company, probably half of Seattle. There are message boards speculating about you two." Maya grinned. "You're terrible at being discreet." "When did you become an expert on my relationship status?" "When I started planning for college and realized you'd be alone in this house for the first time in 17 years. I wanted to make sure you had someone." She hugged him suddenly, fiercely. "I'm glad it's Victoria. She's good for you, makes you take risks, pushes you to be more than just the safe, stable dad who burns pancakes." "I like being the safe, stable dad." "I know. But you can be that and still have something for yourself. You've spent 17 years putting me first. It's okay to let someone else matter too." Ethan felt tears threaten, pride and loss and love all mixed together. "When did you get so wise?" "I had a good teacher, even if he's terrible at being discreet about his girlfriend." That night, after Maya had gone to bed, Ethan sat on the porch and called Victoria. "Maya's leaving Sunday," he said when she answered. "College orientation starts Monday. I'm simultaneously proud and terrified." "That's parenthood. You did an amazing job, Ethan. She's going to thrive at Stanford." "I know, but the house is going to be so empty." "Then maybe you shouldn't spend all your evenings there." Victoria's voice carried gentle suggestion. "Maybe some Thursday dinners could become Friday brunches. Maybe some quiet dates could become actual weekends together. Maybe we stop being quite so discreet about something that everyone already knows about anyway. Maya said the same thing. Apparently we're terrible at being secretive. So let's stop trying. I'll announce to the board that we're in a relationship, file the appropriate disclosure forms, let HR establish whatever protocols they need to manage the power dynamic. We'll be professional and transparent and completely above board about the fact that the CEO and her head of security are dating. That's going to cause some commentary. Let it. We survived a conspiracy and federal investigations. We can survive corporate gossip. She paused. Unless you'd rather keep this quiet. I don't want to push you into visibility you're not ready for. Ethan thought about Maya leaving, about the empty house waiting for him, about 17 years of playing it safe and stable and careful. He thought about the logistics coordinator he'd been a few months ago and the board member he'd become, about the man who'd chosen risk over protocol and saved someone worth saving. No, he said. I'm ready. Let's be visible. Let's be honest about what this is. Let's stop hiding something good because it's complicated. Are you sure? I'm sure. Maya's right. I've spent 17 years putting her first. I'll always put her first. But she's leaving for college. She's building her own life. And maybe it's time I built one too. With you, publicly, complicated and visible and completely worth it. Victoria's voice softened. I'd like that. Very much. Me too. Ethan? Yeah? I'm falling for you. Probably have been since you carried me unconscious through that parking garage and decided protecting me mattered more than following protocol. I just wanted you to know. Ethan felt something warm settle in his chest, certain and solid. I'm falling for you too. Probably have been since you promoted me to a position I wasn't qualified for and trusted me anyway. We make quite a pair. We do. They talked until midnight, planning how to handle the announcement, what disclosures needed to be filed, how to maintain professional boundaries while acknowledging personal connection. It was pragmatic and careful, and exactly the kind of planning that two people who'd survived corporate warfare would do. But underneath the logistics ran something deeper. Two people who'd found each other in chaos and chosen to build something in the calm. It was complicated. It was visible. It was risky. It was worth it. Sunday afternoon, Ethan drove Maya to the airport, helped her check bags that contained everything she'd need for her first year at Stanford. They stood at the security checkpoint, neither quite ready to say goodbye. You're going to be fine, Maya said. You have Victoria. You have the board position. You have a life that doesn't revolve entirely around making sure I'm okay. I'm always going to make sure you're okay. That's what fathers do. I know. But you can do that from a distance while also being happy with Victoria and successful at Hale Industries and all the other things you deserve. She hugged him tight. I love you, Dad. Thank you for everything. For raising me alone, for always showing up, for teaching me that doing the right thing matters even when it's hard. I love you too, sweetheart. Stanford's lucky to have you. Call me when you land? Every day for the first week, probably, then weekly once I settle in. She pulled back, wiped her eyes. Go home, Dad. Call Victoria. Start the next chapter. You've earned it. He watched her disappear through security, watched until she was completely out of sight. Then he walked back to his car, sat in the parking garage, and let himself feel the weight of 17 years of single parenthood finally easing into something new. His phone buzzed. Text from Victoria. How are you doing? Maya's gone. House will be empty when I get home. Then don't go home yet. Come to my place. I'll make dinner. We'll figure out what comes next. Together. Ethan sat in his car, rain beginning to fall on the windshield, Seattle's gray sky pressing down with familiar weight. He thought about going home to an empty house, about burned pancakes and college applications and 17 years of stability built on careful choices. Then he thought about Victoria waiting for him, about complicated things worth having, about taking risks when the timing finally felt right. He started the car. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Perfect. I'll be waiting. Ethan drove through Seattle's evening traffic toward Madison Park, toward the penthouse where this had all started months ago, toward the woman who'd proven that trust was a risk worth taking. The rain fell steady and certain, washing the city clean, preparing it for whatever came next. Behind him, Maya was flying toward her future. Ahead of him, Victoria was waiting for theirs to begin. And Ethan Cole, former logistics coordinator, current head of security, improbable board member, single father who'd learned that sometimes the right thing was the dangerous thing, drove forward into possibility. The conspiracy was over, the threats were neutralized, the company was rebuilding. And for the first time in as long as he could remember, Ethan wasn't just surviving, he was living, fully, openly, with someone who understood that complicated didn't mean impossible. It just meant worth the effort. Together they'd proven that much already. Everything else was just details.